remember when Tom Cruise shattered his ankle on not the last Mission Possible, the Mission Possible before? Me, Kenji, and Donnie were discussing it, and Donnie said something very interesting. Donnie goes, "That's the difference between a movie star and an action star." We said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "There were 25 cameras on Tom Cruise when he did the jump. And Tom Cruise chose the back shot of him hitting and then him scrabbling up onto the roof and, going away." Donnie goes, "An action star would have been boom, 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 20 different angles. Let me show the impact. Let me show that thing." He goes, "Tom Cruise is a different level because Tom Cruise is like, I just need the shots that work."
This week on Action Talks, I'm pleased to introduce Mike Leeder. Mike is a filmmaker and a producer in Hong Kong, and his work includes probably everything you've ever seen out of Hong Kong. He has a huge IMDb list of films, a huge HKMDB. He's had his hands on almost everything that you've seen. I'm really excited to talk to him. I met Mike once in Hong Kong, and he was so gracious, and I've stayed in contact with him ever since. He's a great man. So thank you, Mike, for coming on Action Talks. I'm excited to talk to you today.
Thank you. I should leave now before my image is tarnished. Yeah. But and I feel like the grandfather of this, because I remember back in the days of the Stunt People Forum and this this young man named Eric Jacobus jumping around like a madman. And he's still doing it. Yeah.
Doing my best. I mean, we had our eyes on you, and you had the Impact magazine, and you printed articles about our films, and that was always huge for us because that was a really interesting time, late 90s, early 2000s. But that's not when you started in Hong Kong. Talk about
no. I was already an old man.
What brought you to Hong Kong originally?
A love of Hong Kong movies, a divorce, and I think I'm just going to go to Hong Kong for a couple of weeks, and if I'm lucky, maybe I'll get to see a movie being made, and if I'm really lucky, maybe I'll get to work on one. And 33 years later, I'm still here. So.
Yeah, I've heard that story a few times. People going there, and it does kind of have that. Doesn't it kind of have that feeling to it? At least it did then. Maybe it's different now. But this idea that when you go there and you meet one actor, one stuntman, one person who's a PA on a production, and you end up on set, and now you're meeting stunt performers, for example. Was that what it was like for you?
Yeah, I mean, I think on my second or third day, I bumped into Jeff Falcon from Elder Brother and thing. I was running for the Star Ferry, the ferry that connects Hong Kong Island and Kowloon side, and I knocked this guy over. And I was like, "Really sorry, mate." And he's like, "Yeah, fine." I was like, "Hey, you're the guy from Inspector Wears Skirts." And he was, I think, confused by how I knew who he was. And then we got chatting, and then a day or two later, thanks to Mark Houghton, I got invited to the premiere of Skinny Tiger, Fatty Dragon, and met Donnie and Michael Woods and John Salvetti and Samo and everyone all there. So, and that's exactly what Hong Kong is and still is. That it's so much of it here is timing, like especially back in the day. If anyone sends me a show reel, I'll watch it. I've had people send me 3-hour show reels, and I've watched them. I might have had to fast forward a few times, but back in the day, especially, you could walk into a company today, give them your show reel, do a demonstration, and they'd be like, "But we don't need anyone with a beard today," and they'd throw it away. And the next day, they'd be like, "We need a guy who can kick and has a beard." And you'd be like, "What about the guy who came in yesterday?" "Oh, we didn't need anyone yesterday. We threw his stuff away." And there was there was always that kind of madness, and that's what one of the reasons I love Hong Kong is that so much of it can be you meet someone and that person is like, hey, da 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 da, can you do this? Can you do this? And it's all interconnected. Everybody knows each other, and it's God, especially back in the early '90s. It was a mad time in so many ways, but it was so much fun. And I mean, it's still a lot of fun, but it was a totally mad time back then in a good way. Yeah.
Can you talk about what the environment, what the air was like around the action business back then? Were people optimistic? Were they excited to try new things out?
Yeah, I mean, okay, to be really cheesy, the air when you used to land in Hong Kong, you would get the air immediately because the old airport at Kai Tak, the one that's always in the movies, the runway was on the Nula into the harbor on reclaimed land, and it was really smelly water. So, like, as soon as you landed, you got that Hong Kong smell. You got this like in blast. But it was a really exciting time. I mean, it was so busy. I mean, when I arrived, it was 300 to 400 movies a year. And it was literally, you could go from set to set to set to set. One of my neighbors where I live is a Kohon from Lethal Weapon 4, Hitman in Hand, Buddha, everything. And he holds the record for like not going home for so many days and just sleeping in vans, going from set to set to set. And Hong Kong and China crews to this day are like that. You'll turn around and the cameraman will be asleep at the camera because there's a 5-minute break. When we were doing Fearless, there's one shot in the finale where I'm not only asleep, I'm sprawled out on the desk. And I'm like, number one, how did nobody see me? And two, how come even the guy sitting next to me didn't wake me up? So every time I see Fearless, when Jet Li and Sito Nakamura are fighting, there's one shot and I'm like, I'm asleep. I'm like sprawled on the desk. This is not good. But it was a really exciting time. I mean, that if you were a Westerner and you knew Hong Kong movies and knew things, you were also of interest to people because they were like, you know my stuff, you know who I am. And if you were talking to anyone from who'd worked in Shaw Brothers movies, their second question would be, do you have any of my movies? Because at that time, none of the Shaw's movies were available in Hong Kong. I mean, the best way to look at it
in America?
No, in Hong Kong. Like you have to understand that whereas like with Bruce Lee passed away, but his movies were constantly released and released and released. The Shaw Brothers movies, 99% of them never made it to VHS or LD or anything in Hong Kong.
Why?
So Sir Run Shaw just was very careful about piracy in Hong Kong, so he never released them. So like with Alexander Fusheng, for instance, to all of us, it's Alexander Fusheng. To Hong Kong, people of a certain age know who he is, but anyone after that age is like, who? Because so like Gordon Liu, David Chang, all these guys, it was kind of like you could see their frustration because so much of their work was just unavailable. Like there's a friend of mine who ended up working for Celestial, and she was always like, oh, Mike, what's the appeal of Gordon Liu? And I was like, it's Gordon Liu. He's incredible. But it was Gordon Liu when he had hair. And she was always like, yeah. And then she met him just after he'd shaved his head to do Kill Bill. And she was like, Mike, I understand the appeal of Gordon Liu. He's like Yul Brynner. He's got that charisma. He's got that thing. But it was crazy. So any Shaw Brothers actor or director would be like, do you have any of my movies? And if so, can you give me copies? Because and also you realized very, very quickly that a lot of actors in Hong Kong don't know their movies, aren't aware of it. Like, okay, you know who Li Haisheng is, right? Right. So
he's great. Wing Chun guy.
The very majestic Wing Chun guy. I was interviewing him for a Dragon Dysentery release, of I think 36 Chamber of Shaolin, and we were changing tapes. That's how long ago it was. We were changing the Digibetacam tapes. And I said to him, one of my favorite movies is Enter the Fat Dragon, where you're playing the African American guy. And he's like, what are you talking about? And I was like, blah, blah, blah. And he's like, you're an idiot. Like, I don't know what you're talking about. So I pull out my laptop and I go online and show him the clip. And he's like, that's me. I'm playing an African. What movie is this? And it was that often you'd get that thing where you'd be like, Eric, this movie you made is the greatest movie of all time. And you're like, oh, it was just a couple of days' work for me. And realizing that, say, for Li Haisheng, that was a movie that he'd probably worked a week on in 1976, 77, had no memory of, maybe seen at the cinema at the premiere, never seen again. And so it was crazy. And
so you're saying even Golden Harvest movies, people didn't
no. Golden Harvest movies and D&B and everything were all available on VHS and things, but there was no collectible market. There was no sell through. There was no thing. So in Hong Kong, people were like, well, yeah, you see the movie at the cinema, then you see it on VHS or LD, and then you see it when it turns up on TV. So people are like, how have you seen my movie 20 times? I'm like, well, I have copies of it. How do you have a copy, and why would you have a copy? And growing up in England, I was used to there being, movie memorabilia shops where you could get posters and lobby cards and everything. So when I arrived in Hong Kong, I thought, I'll be able to at least buy some posters and some stuff. Zero memorabilia. I will admit, I used to walk around with an Allen key and open bus shelters and things and take the posters out because, I'd ask at the cinema, I'd be like, hey, excuse me, when the movie finishes playing, is there any chance I could buy the poster or whatever? No, I'll give you money for it. No. And you'd be like, why not? Oh, we're not allowed to do that. Well, what are you going to do with it? We're going to throw it away. And it was just so bizarre. So one of the first things I remember asking my parents was, can you send me a whole bunch of my Hong Kong movies and a whole bunch of the films that I got? Because I miss them. And certain movies.
I'm in Hong Kong. I miss my Hong Kong movies. Please send them to me.
Yeah, I mean, and as I said, the craziness was the Shaw Brothers movies that basically, maybe 10 or 11 Shaw Brothers movies from the height of the Shaw Brothers era had come out on ocean shores somehow. Crazy Shaolin Disciples was out, but no 36 Chamber of Shaolin or anything. It was a very random selection. And, you'd explain to Shaw Brothers and go, you do know your movies are everywhere else, legally and illegally. The old Golden Harvest, for instance. The old Golden Harvest had a press office that was totally shit. Didn't do anything. Because when I arrived, I thought, okay, the English press obviously will have some information about Hong Kong cinema. And to this day, I go, the English press in Hong Kong doesn't know anything about Hong Kong cinema. And part of it is Hong Kong companies are like, well, that's English press. Why would we talk to them? So with Golden Harvest, you would contact their press office and go, hi, I'd like to interview Jackie Chan or Sammo Hung or come visit the set. No answer, or you just get no. So the easiest way to do anything was to take the bus from Tsim Sha Tsui up to 8 Hammer Hill Road, Diamond Hill. There was a bus stop literally just outside Golden Harvest door. Walk up to the main gate and wave at the security, who would think, you're a Westerner. You maybe have a reason to be here, so we're not going to stop you. And you just walk around, and that's how you get access to locations. I remember one of the times on Drunken Master 2, I'd gone up there one night, and Jackie had been in a really bad mood. So it felt uncomfortable, so I left. And Like 2 days later, I came back and I was walking through Golden Harvest, and a window opened, and there's Jackie Chan going, Mike, come here. I go in there and he's like, where did you go the other day? I went, oh, you're in a bad mood. And he was like, oh, I'm Jackie Chan. I can't be in a bad mood. I was like, yeah. But it was, you could get access to people because you didn't have to go through agents and managers. There was a lot of like, well, you've turned up. So, okay, we'll give you the time of day. I sometimes miss that because I mean, I spent a load of time on the set of Drunkenness too. I've just found the last week or so a whole bunch of negatives. For our younger viewers, these are negatives. You know, from the finale of Drunken Master 2. And it's like, I didn't have permission to be on set, but just went up there. Nobody stopped me. And I miss that you could just go to the set. You could think, and because in Hong Kong, a lot of filming is to this day is still done guerrilla style. If you ran into people on the street, there was no set security pushing you away saying you can't have access. The funny thing is, Hong Kong people will watch you shooting a movie for maybe 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then they get bored and go back to what they're doing. The fact that there was this white guy standing there looking interested, someone would normally come over and be like, what do you want? And you'd be like, oh my God, that's Eric Jacobus, or that's so-and-so. And they'd be like, you know who they are? Oh, you want to talk to them? You know, so back in the day, it was great, you know. And yeah, I miss that. It's, and I'm old now. I can't sneak onto sets as easily. I'm too noticeable. Yeah, you know?
When you would talk to, the likes of Jackie Chan and whoever it might be, what kind of information or what kind of things would you ask them that you thought would be interesting to the international press, to England, to the UK especially?
Yeah, I mean, I will be honest that at first I was incredibly selfish and would just ask questions that I wanted to know the answer. And I wouldn't be thinking like, oh, is this good for an interview? I'd be like, I just want to know for myself. And it's like, even now, I'm still the terrible one on set going, can we talk about this? Can we ask, like, hey, do you remember this movie? Do you remember that movie? What was also funny was when you realized that certain people didn't have the market or the recognition in Hong Kong anymore, like Bolo. Bolo, for instance, internationally, we're like, it's Bolo, yeah. In Hong Kong, people are like, you know who he is? And you're like, yeah, he's an international movie star. Mate, he's a nobody. Because Bolo had his time in like the 70s, and then in the 80s, he kind of became a supporting player and blah, blah, blah. But then when Bloodsport and Double Impact and everything came, he realized, wait a minute, there's an international market. I can go and do movies internationally and then come back to Hong Kong and just live my normal life, and nobody will bother me. And so there was always things like that. But yeah, I would always ask questions that I wanted to know about. And God, this is back in the day when sometimes you wouldn't know what was coming out in the UK, or like, stuff would come out with stupid title changes. Like, Tiger Cage isn't a good name. Surefire, that's a good name for a movie. And there would be terrible covers. Like, I'm old. I'm from the days of 5th generation VHS with burnt in multiple subtitles. And half the time it'd be full screen, and you'd be like, I'm missing stuff, and English dubs. If you told me, 30 odd years ago, Mike, you're going to be able to watch these movies multi-language, fully restored, like the game, like the Arrow Game of Death footage, I'd never believe you, and I don't think anyone in Hong Kong would have believed you, because here, one of the things I also very quickly realized was a lot of people here, film is disposable. Film's like McDonald's. You make the movie, you see the movie, we're done, move on to the next one. So a lot of companies didn't take care of materials. A lot of companies opened and closed. A lot of films disappeared. So yeah, it was kind of weird. And I said, like, even now, like, I ask the questions I want to find out about. So I'm always like, can you tell me about this, and what was your thinking behind that? But no, I mean, I asked Jackie about stuff, and I think, like, Jackie liked it if you didn't talk about Bruce Lee. Like, because back then it was when the American press were constantly, comparing him to Bruce Lee and everything. I remember talking to Ken Lowe one time, and he'd done an interview for Inside Kung Fu, and their first question had been like, "So Ken, did you know Bruce Lee?" And Ken was like, "I think I was 10 when he died, like, and I was in Cambodia." So, like, but he was like, "What is the deal?" And so with Jackie, if you asked him about his stuff, and if you asked him about the funny thing was, Jackie back then, one of the things that was awesome was he had no, unless Willie Chan was there, Jackie had no buffer. He'd tell you exactly how he felt. So like he'd be like, "Oh, that movie's crap, and this movie's thing," and like Miracles is the best movie of all time because as a director, I got to do this and I got to do that, and I got to have camera cranes, And you'd be like, "Yeah, but can you tell me about Wong Jun Lee kicking your teeth out?" And he'd be like, "I don't want to talk about that." Whereas Samo, to this day, Samo loves talking about Bruce Lee. Like, I wasn't a Bruce Lee fan in England because I'd only seen the really badly edited and censored versions. Like, how to say, I was 5 when Bruce Lee died, so I can't claim that his death affected me in a deep personal way. But like the versions of the Bruce Lee movies I'd seen, Game of Death, Dan Inosanto wasn't in it. Fist of Fury, Bruce Lee's fighting in the dojo. Suddenly everyone's holding their heads and holding their knees, and I'm like, what's going on? Way of the Dragon, I thought it was a joke about how fast Bruce Lee is because he went out into the alleyway and then he came straight back in. So I was like, okay. And then one day Samo was like, "You don't like Bruce Lee movies?" I went, "No." And he went, "Okay, tomorrow come to the office." And I went to the old office in Kowloon City and we watched all the Bruce Lee movies on Laserdisc with him explaining camera work and intricacies and pointing out that Bruce Lee did this and all the references that he has in his movies. Like, if you watch License to Steal with Mina Gadenzi and Axel, the end fight is Game of Death, Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, Bruce Lee. It's pretty much the exact fight, just some different camera work. Because someone was like, "Oh, we were running out of time," and that was a fight I knew, so we did that fight. And yeah, I mean, it was just, it was, it I hate to say it was great, and it was funny how some actors and directors were very open. Some people were kind of standoffish, sometimes for language. Sometimes I think they were just like confused. Like, I remember Maggie Jung was like, incredibly friendly, but was like, "I don't even want to talk about my movies." And she was happy to talk about life in England and stuff, but she wasn't really talking about her movies. And like, it was just that weird thing that certain actors and directors, to this day are like, "No, let's talk about stuff." And other people are like,
We really wanted to know that stuff. I mean, I think even to this day, when I ask nitty gritty details like that on these action talks, and I think sometimes the guests are kind of like surprised that I want to know about that stuff. But did they understand the appeal of what they were doing
No.
internationally?
I really think most Hong Kong actors and directors and producers didn't really understand the international appeal. Whereas, how to say, like Joseph Lai from IFD and Thomas Tang from Filmer and Godfrey Ho, they understood there was this huge international market. A lot of Hong Kong filmmakers and companies I don't think understood because okay, prime example, there's a Stephen Chow movie called Legend of the Dragon, and it's like it's basically it's Way of the Dragon, Return of the Dragon, but with snooker instead of kung fu, and it has a British snooker player, Jimmy White, playing the Chuck Norris kind of role, and a company in England was like, "Hey Mike, we've heard about this movie, we'd like to buy it and give it a big VHS release," and Cinema City were like, "No, has to be theatrical, has to be this, has to be that." And I was like, "Guys, nobody knows who Stephen Chow is internationally. Nobody gets that. Now you could do it, but back then, like you think about it, how big a thing it was when Rumble in the Bronx got a theatrical release, and everything. You're like, oh my god, I'm getting to see a Hong Kong movie on the big screen, and not just for one showing. or like, like back in the day, I would go to Chinatown, and you'd be trying to find out what was playing, and there was the late night kung fu circuit, but just to see a film on the big screen was mad. So I think a lot of the companies didn't know, and I think also because a lot of people like Jackie and Samo had kind of tried to break into the international and hit all the obstacles. So a lot of people had kind of gone, okay, that market's never going to accept our choreography. I remember being on the set of Crime Story, and I'm talking to Jackie, and he was like, I've got a great idea. I'm going to remake Police Story with Mel Gibson. I was like, what? He goes, and instead of the bus chase, we'll have the trolley cars in San Francisco, and we'll do this and we'll do that, and I'll just direct and choreograph it, and it'll be a huge hit. I'll have to tone down the action, blah 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 blah. But he was like, boom. And even with like Rush Hour, I remember talking to Jackie a couple of days before he went to America for the premiere, and his attitude was, I'm going to go to America, we're going to do the premiere, the movie's going to flop, and I'm going to come back to Hong Kong and just carry on making Hong Kong movies. And a week later, he came back and was like, I have the #1 movie in the world. And to this day, he'll happily sit down with you and argue that all of this is wrong. Like, no, mate, this movie's better. And like, even for me, I always go, the problem is you got to look, Rush Hour is a perfect sampler. If you've never seen a Jackie Chan movie, it's like the Forbidden Kingdom movie, the movie with Jackie and Jack. I remember when that was coming out, I was working. What movie was I working on? We were in early steps for True Legend. And I was going, well, actually, Forbidden Kingdom is exactly, it's a sampler. Because wait a minute, Jackie Chan's playing a drunken master. Jet Li's playing a monk. There's a woman with white hair who can do all this kung fu stuff. There's a Monkey King. Yeah, I've kind of heard my friends who like Hong Kong movies talking about this. Let me go and have a look. And I think that's kind of what you've got to look at, that you can't compare an an international movie with a Hong Kong movie. And I think even Jackie kind of explained, like one time I interviewed him and we're talking, he said, what if you took Tom Hanks to Hong Kong? How many roles could Tom Hanks play in a Hong Kong movie? And I was like, what do you mean? He goes, because he was explaining that, Jackie was saying, my English isn't good enough. I can't play an American Chinese character. So I have to play a cop or a triad or blah, blah, blah. And he goes, but if you took Tom Hanks to Hong Kong, what's Tom Hanks going to play? A businessman, a CIA operative, blah, blah, blah. And I think that's kind of the thing you're going to look at and go, okay, there is a point to it. And you think about it, like back when you started, if someone had said to you, you do know that the guy from Bill and Ted is going to become a huge international action star, and he's going to bring Yuen Woo-ping to America, to choreograph a movie, we'd have all laughed at it, And then, of course, that's what happened. Like, and the same with Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. You go, if you told somebody that a Chinese language kung fu sword play movie is going to win an Oscar, or that Michelle Yeoh is going to win an Oscar 30 years later, no one would believe it. And it's kind of interesting to see how now certain people are clicking in the right way. It's frustrating that Jackie and Michelle and Jay and Fat and everyone weren't given those kind of roles back then. But I think that was the problem, that there was still that kind of thing of the blinkers. And the funny thing is, it's the same sometimes in Hong Kong. Like a friend of mine who's an American Chinese actress, she was complaining about sometimes the limitations of the roles she was offered. And I was like, come to Hong Kong and China and be a white guy and see what roles we get offered. Terrorist, gangster, assassin, backpacker. That's it.
Idiot.
There you go. And you go, it's that kind of weird thing. And it's amazing to see how stuff we all loved, and we all thought we were the cool guys because we loved it. has now kind of become mainstream. You know, like it amazes me that you go, like, wait a minute, there's movies with, Yuen Woo-ping as an action director, and there's movies with, you know, this person doing that, and wait a minute, people are making jokes about Jackie Chan or Chow Yun-fat or whatever, and the audience gets it. So yeah. I think it's just the frustrating thing is it's that timing thing.
Yeah. So at that time, this is the early mid 80s. When I'm thinking about, Cannonball Run, and Jackie's trying to make a run, trying to make a splash in America. It's not quite clicking, but at the same time, he makes a huge splash in Japan. And did he and Sammo understand their appeal in Japan better than in America? And why?
Okay, there is so much stuff that has been shot just for Japan. Like, you had Ruben on a couple of weeks ago. I love Ruben, one of the best dudes. We shot a Japanese TV show called like Chronicles of the Laughing Dog or something, was it thing? And they said, and for the show, they had a guy. One of the hosts went to America to learn how to dance like John Travolta in Pulp Fiction, and then had to perform in front of John Travolta. And the other guy had to come to Hong Kong and learn how to fight like Sammo Hung and perform in front of Sammo Hung. And we were setting up the Hong Kong shoot, and the Japanese producers were like, when Sammo comes, can Sammo have the bowl haircut? And we were like, yeah, but he doesn't have that haircut. They're like, no, we'll pay extra for him to wear a wig. And we were like, we can't ask Sammo to wear a wig. And Sammo was like, it's for Japan. Put the wig on straight away, and was happy to wear the wig and make fun of it. But it was just, they knew the Japanese market was this incredible thing. Like Yun Bu's movie, A Kid from Tibet. There's a 2.5 hour Japanese making of documentary. And the fact that Yun Bu recorded an English language album for Japan. It's that weird thing of like certain markets clicked, certain things. Like say with Cannonball Run, like Jackie back then was trying to get Burt Reynolds to do a kind of Rush Hour movie with him. And Burt Reynolds at the time was the king and was always like, yeah, Jackie, later. When Burt Reynolds' star fell, he came to Hong Kong to see Jackie, and Jackie was like, it's too late. Like the times have changed. It's going to be on my terms now. Okay, back then the market was something like Korea. If Joey Wong was in your movie, Wong Joe-in from Chinese Ghost Story, Korea, $1 million purchase. So like, that's why she was doing some movies. A couple of years ago, I was doing a very bad movie, sadly, Europe Raiders. The Jingle Ma directed with Tony Leung, and I brought in Kung Lee and Gigi Yanin for it. And Wong Kar-wai was producing it and rewriting the script every couple of days and everything. And one night we're having dinner, and I was like, hey, Mr. Wong, can I ask you a question? And he goes, what? I went, there's a shot in Ashes of Time in the montage, like at the end. And I could swear it's Joey Wong in one shot. And he goes, oh, it is. I was like, but she's not in the movie. He goes, oh, yeah, I cut her out completely. But as long as she was in one shot, I could get my money from Korea. And the same way, there's a movie with the wonderful title, Eternal Fist, Dale Apollo Cook, produced by Davian, shot in the Philippines, where Cynthia Khan turns up playing two characters who are totally unrelated, but are the only Chinese female in the whole movie. That movie was purely and simply, if Cynthia Khan's in the movie, we can sell it to Korea for this much money and cover the budget. Okay. So there was that weird thing, like the Philippines, for instance. The Philippines would say, give me the first reel, the third reel, and the last reel of your movie, and they would time the action. Okay, there's not enough action, we're not buying it. So that was when you'd suddenly have these bizarre edits for certain territories, and like for Malaysia, when Infernal Affairs came out, everyone was like, oh, there's a different ending for China. I was like, there's been tons of Hong Kong movies with different endings for Malaysia and because Malaysia, you can't have vigilantes. So that's why Above the Law, Righting Wrong, original edit, Yun Mu dies, Cynthia Rothrock dies, everybody dies. International, they survive. Now, the funny thing was, the first time I saw Above the Law, I saw the international version. So when I first watched the Chinese version, I was like, wait a minute, Cynthia Rothrock's dead. Like, well, hang on. And you would have these bizarre edits for certain territories. And like in the Philippines as well, the marketing was genius. It would be Eric Jacobus. That's not a good name. Dave Jacobus. That's the name that's going to sell. So so there you go. So like Frankie Chan was Jackie Chan's brother. Jeff Falcon, arch rival of Van Damme. That's how we got Cynthia Luster and Sharon Foster. And all this craziness. And like, I think my favorite is there's a movie Gary Daniels did called Capital Punishment. And in the Philippines, I remember me and the late great Darren Shalabi, we were in the Philippines. We went to the cinema to see Bloodsport 2, as it was called. And it said, starring Gary Daniels, Bruce Lee's brightest disciple, contemporary of Chuck Norris, and this is the best bit, the man who killed Jean-Claude Van Damme at the 1992 Bloodsport Invitational. And we were like, wait a minute, the poster says he killed Jean-Claude Van Damme. And it was just, there was that one thing like Donnie Yen. Donnie Yen is Michael Ryan in the Philippines. Andy Lau is Jason Chan. You'd realize certain territories, the marketing would be tweaked this way. Certain stuff would work for certain things. You'd have those like the Taiwanese edits that are often longer and more violent. Like how to say, like in Hong Kong, the craziness. This is when it was on 35mm film. You'd do a midnight preview on a Saturday night, and the movie would open on the Thursday the following week. Sometimes you would go to the cinema at the preview, and the movie you saw on the Thursday was almost totally different because they'd have been like, okay, this didn't work. We're going to edit. We're going to change it. And there were certain Hong Kong cinemas where the audiences were incredibly vocal and incredibly, you could gauge the reaction. There used to be a cinema in Tsim Sha Tsui East in the 90s. And in the 90s, Tsim Sha Tsui East was super triad territory and super rough. And there was a 5-screen multiplex called Chinacam. And I remember watching Ashes of Time there, and the audience did not like that movie. And chairs were thrown and ripped up, and it was that very weird thing. And it was that same thing of certain movies that work in Hong Kong that don't work internationally, and vice versa. Like a Story of Ricky. Before that movie came out, Fancy Wong was going to be king. I remember having a meeting with his family, and his mother and father wanted me to come and live with them and teach Fancy Wong English to groom him for international stardom. And we were discussing money and everything. And then Story of Ricky opened and died. And in Hong Kong, that movie, either people didn't remember it or they remembered it as, that's the movie that killed Fancy Wong's career. Like, and you'd tell people, no, it's a huge international cult movie. No, Mike, that movie's terrible. It destroyed Fancy Wong's career. And for years, even Fancy Wong kind of had an issue with it because he was like, I was going to be a contender, and then that movie knocked it back. And it's that weird thing of the movies that work for certain countries, and like Eastern Condors in Hong Kong, people don't really know that movie because it did so at the box office. And in Hong Kong, people went, Hong Kong doesn't go to war. Like, I don't believe that Sammo Hung and you're going to Vietnam to fight in the war. That makes no sense. So it's very weird. Like, even a couple of years ago, there was a movie called Murderer with Aaron Kwok. And it's a kind of bizarre supernatural movie where the villain has the Gary Coleman disease. It's a kid who's never aged. So it's like Aaron Kwok's half brother from when he was a kid, 30 years later comes back for revenge, still looking like a 10-year-old. And in Hong Kong, people were like, if that movie took place in Thailand or in Korea or in another country, that movie would make sense. But this would never happen in Hong Kong. I was like, what? You'd never have a kid who hasn't aged for 30 years coming back. And it was that weird thing of what worked for certain territories, what worked for others. And it's like the IFD movies, none of them ever got a release in Hong Kong. I think even for like Unbeatable with Cynthia Rothrock in Honor and Glory, Godfrey did Hong Kong edits, like adding Yukari Ashima and other people to the edit to make it work for Hong Kong. So there was always that weirdness of what worked in certain territories and what didn't. And when I arrived, everything got cinema release. Like Best of the Best 2 got cinema release. Best of the Best 3 got cinema release. I got to see Nemesis on the big screen, Albert Pien's movie. So it was great, and there was tons of grindhouse cinemas, and it was great because you got to see everything. And like I used to go to the cinema probably 4 or 5 nights a week, and it was cheap as chips as well. It was like $2 for a ticket, so like it was awesome. But it was just really weird to see what was working for certain territories. Okay, Pretty Woman played in Hong Kong for like a year and a half. Ghost played forever. Certain movies just clicked with Hong Kong audiences. Like to this day, Jackie and Samo know The Sound of Music backwards because, according to Samo, that movie was great. It was very long, so you could spend more time in the cinema. And the cinemas had air conditioning, and back then, especially if you look like Sammo Hung or Jackie Chan, no usher would come over and go, "Excuse me, sir, you've watched this movie 3 times in a row." It was a very weird time, and it was, and it was very weird being a Westerner because I would go to the Chinese cinema, and even though by law Hong Kong movies had to have English subtitles, 99% of the time when I was buying a ticket, the cashier and often a manager would come over and go, "Excuse me, sir, you do know this is a Chinese movie?" And I'd be like, "Yeah, it's Yun Bu, it's Sammo Hung, it's Jackie Chan." "Yeah, but you do know it's a Chinese movie, sir. You are aware of that." And I'd be like, "Are you going to go up to every Chinese person and go, 'Excuse me, sir, this is an American movie?'" And the same way, a lot of movies got dubbed in Hong Kong. The premiere of Rumble in the Bronx was a terrible Cantonese dub of Rumble in the Bronx. Because Hong Kong distributors were like, Hong Kong audiences don't want to see a Hong Kong star speak in English. So movies like Kirk Wong's Taking Manhattan and Rumble in the Bronx, Mr. Nice Guy, etc., were dubbed. Tons of Japanese anime would come out in Hong Kong dubbed into Cantonese. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the live action movie was dubbed into Cantonese. Tons of movies would get dubbed. Black Mask 2. When Black Mask 2 finally came out, the Cantonese dub is a comedy. The Cantonese dub is completely insane. Wayne's World. The Chinese subtitles for Wayne's World are about a character called Jackie and a character called Sammo. And there's all these jokes that have nothing to do with Wayne's World because somebody went, "I've got to localize this and make it work for a local audience." So there was always this weird kind of thing, And the same way, you'd talk about the people that we all thought were cool, and they'd be like, "Why would you like that person?" Steven Seagal movies were kind of like, Van Damme movies were like so. It was that weird thing of the movies that work for certain audiences,
Can you talk about the perceptions of from the perspective of Jackie and Sammo and the directors and filmmakers towards their respective audiences in Japan, Korea? I mean, were they fans of Japanese cinema and Korean cinema, and were they trying to emulate that? And I would love to understand what the perception was of Japanese people in general by Hong Kong filmmakers, especially after films like Fist of Fury, where they're portrayed very negatively.
Oh, of course, seasonal films with the wonderful hero defeating Japs starring Chen Quintai. The funny thing is, there's always been tons of Japanese crew working in Hong Kong. Like half the, a whole bunch of cinematographers at Shaw Brothers and Golden Harvest were Japanese. There's various crew. Like Yasuki Kurata was always like, I play a bad Japanese guy. I make lots of money playing a bad Japanese guy. So there was that weird thing of like, yeah, it's like if we have a Japanese bad guy, it works. But I don't really think there was a real, for Hong Kong people, an anti-Japanese thing. It was kind of like in China, there is still a lot of issues come up that, between China and Japan still. And it's a lot more like patriotism and politically driven there of like, this is thing. But like, I think Hong Kong audiences were just like, okay, the Japanese are the bad guys. Like for all of us growing up, it was like you'd see a war movie, go, oh, the Germans are the bad guys. You wouldn't necessarily beat up the German kid at school,
Yeah,
but
right. Yeah, you're not gonna
so
exactly.
but like a lot of Hong Kong, a lot of Japanese films played in Hong Kong. Like I remember picking up all the Zatoichi movies on VHS and like a lot of samurai movies. A lot of Japanese cinema came to Hong Kong. I don't think a lot of Korean cinema came before the kind of mid 90s. You'd get certain Korean films would come, and it's the same way that, okay, you got to look at it. Hong Kong movies, said by law, because it was a British colony, had to have English subtitles. So immediately there was an accessibility to them. Korean movies didn't have to have subtitles. And Korea, you could make enough money in Korea that you didn't have to sell the movie internationally. So that's why a lot of people are like, oh, Wong Jun Lee and Casanova Wong and Dragon Lee, they all retired, they all disappeared. No, they all went back to Korea and continued making movies. But most of those movies never went anywhere internationally. And the funny thing is, that's where companies like IFD went, okay, we'll pick up the rights for these movies and we'll sell them internationally and remarket them. So, because in like Korea, okay, by law, every Korean cinema has to show Korean movies for half the year, like 180 days. Every screen has to show Korean movies. Like when we were doing Rush Hour 3, originally one of the meetings we were looking at various people. We flew out to meet with Choi Min-sik about maybe playing the villain role. And it was just when Korea and America were having a fight over movies. And I arrived in Korea and all these Korean actors and directors were burning the US flag and everything. And Choi Min-sik's manager was like, Mr. Choi will be happy to meet you for a coffee, but he doesn't think it'd be a good idea to do an audition, at the moment. And it was that thing like, okay. So there was that weird thing. Whereas in Korea, Hong Kong films are huge. Hong Kong and Japanese films, same thing. They play theatrically. Jung Do-hong, the awesome Korean actor or anything. Huge fan of Japanese cinema. He flew to Japan to meet Hiroyuki Sanada because he was such a fan of his. Yeah, he was like, it wasn't for a movie. I just flew there because I was like, Mr. Sanada, you're my hero. And Sanada was like, okay, nice to meet you. And it's that weird thing that certain movies would work all over. Like I said, in Korea, Hong Kong movies got theatrical. In the Philippines, Malaysia, everything, Thailand. Donnie Yen released albums in Thailand as a singer. Michael Wong released albums singing in Thai. But like very few Thai movies worked in Hong Kong until sort of like On Bak came along or some of the ghost movies. So it's always been weird of like what works, what doesn't work. And it's kind of like how to say, like, when say the early 90s, when companies would be like, oh, we've got to redub this movie for America. America, and we've got to change this and make it more accessible. Like, the killer. Oh, Mickey, let's change these characters. We can't have them called Mickey Mouse and Dumbo. Oh, we'll change these names. We'll make it like this. And you go, you're taking away all these elements. You're trying to market an action comedy as a deadly serious action movie. And, it's, to this day, I look at the marketing of some of the movies and just go, how, like The Protector. The Protector is a guilty pleasure, both the American edit and the Asian edit. But if you look at the American trailer, there is not one punch or kick being thrown. It's Jackie Chan, it's Dirty Harry, and you're going, wait a minute, you're selling this like it's a bad action movie. Like, you're not even showing anything cool. And I think that was the problem, that a lot of companies didn't know. It's that weird thing, like, when Enter the Dragon worked, everyone cashed in on it. So the problem was, everyone can, this is Bruce Lee's brother and this is Bruce Lee's lost movie and blah, 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 blah. And they kind of destroyed the market. The same way the ninja movies did that. And then the same way, suddenly every Hong Kong movie was being marketed as if John Woo had directed it. And, there were all the crazy, Xenon releases where, it was, everything was Wu-Tang something. And, and I think the problem is it screws up the market. Because, say, like we were talking about earlier, your movie Immortal. In some territories, I can go, I'll release that as Highlander 6, blah, 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 blah. And I'll make some money, but I destroy your name and the genre at the same time. And I think that's the problem, that, you can mismarket something and screw it up so badly. That's why the early 2000s, Peter Chan, who did The Warlords and everything, when he set up his company Applause Pictures, the idea was, we're going to release my movie in America. You are an American filmmaker. I trust you to market this the right way for America. I'm going to take your movie and I'm going to market it the right way for Hong Kong, because I'm a Hong Kong filmmaker. There was always that thing of trying to find the balance and trying to find the thing. But like Samo knows his Japanese films, Jackie knows them, and they appreciate that market. Like Jackie loves it, loves his Japanese market, but also loves his Korean market. The reason a lot of movies shot in Korea was there's that martial tradition. Certain stuff crosses over and translates very easily. And it was also that time where stuff sometimes took a long time to get to Hong Kong. Like, certain movies would take forever. Like, I remember Unforgiven, the Clint Eastwood movie came to Hong Kong about 8 months after it opened in America. Just certain movies would take forever. And also, Hong Kong audiences can be super fickle. Prime example, when Terminator 2 opened in Hong Kong, they did a midnight screening the week before. In every single cinema in Hong Kong, there was a midnight screening. So it didn't sell out. So Hong Kong audiences went, it didn't sell out. Maybe it's not that good. And you're like, no, it was in every single cinema. There's a cinema in Hong Kong a friend of mine owns, the UA cinemas. And one of his cinemas, well, actually, all his cinemas have one queue. No matter how many screens they have, there's one queue. So you go past and you go, oh, okay, I want to buy tickets for that movie. There's a queue. It must be good. Because like a Hong Kong audience will go, oh, there's no one queuing up. Nobody's bought a ticket. Nobody wants to be first to the party. Yeah.
Can you shed light on that phenomenon in Hong Kong? And I know that it's not fair to compare Hong Kong to a place like America because it's got 1/50th of the population size. So you are talking about a city, but it does sound like what you're saying is like, well, when like somebody might judge the success of something based on how many people watch that thing.
Oh yeah, I mean, you got to understand, like, okay, this is probably going to be controversial. A lot of people come out with the Chinese market destroyed Hong Kong film. No, it didn't. You look at a successful Hong Kong movie of the 80s and 90s, and a big box office was maybe 10 to 20 million US. That was considered a huge box office for a Hong Kong movie. The China market opened, and people went, wait a minute, I can get 100 million. okay, let me market my movie to that. It wasn't China forcing upon it. It was actually a lot of filmmakers just went, if I make this movie China friendly, I can get all that budget and I can get all that access. It's, you talk to China distributors and they're like, we don't have a problem with Hong Kong movies. It's just a lot of people are like, oh, I want to go for the money. And it's like when a lot of people acted as if Jackie and Zhao Yun-Fat and everything were being forced at gunpoint to make these movies in America. And you're like, you do know they weren't being forced into it. It was a case of the paycheck. I remember when we did Rush Hour 3, Jackie was complaining about the script. And I was like, but Jackie, you have the power to go, the script isn't good enough. We need to delay the shoot. We need to work on the script. And he was like, yeah, but mate, they're paying me 25 million US. And I was like, yeah, but surely the fact they're paying you that much money means you have the power to go, hey guys. He was like, but mate, they've also given me the China and Japanese, market. And I went, oh, okay. Like some Hong Kong movies make no money at all. Like some of the ones we want, like there used to be a magazine called City Entertainment, and City Entertainment used to publish the box office. When Chingalok made his Green Hornet movie, I think the box office at the end of the week it played was about $4,000 total. And you go, yeah, but the budget was small. It wasn't that small. It was that weird thing of like, sometimes you look at a lot of Hong Kong movies and you go, okay, they were making their money internationally, but you go, they were just, the Hong Kong market, the biggest problem was the Hong Kong market for so long was so easy to work. Okay, I'm going to put Ruben, Scott Adkins, and Mark Dacascos in this movie. Get out my calculator. Guaranteed 25 million US. Okay, we'll make the movie. Because you can do all your pre-sales and everything. Like, there's a movie, The Avenging Quartet. The one with Cynthia Khan, Moon Lee, Michiko Nichiwaki, and Karajima. That movie was pre-sold on that photo shoot. The cool photo shoot of them all in the leather. That's how it was sold. And the producer was like, okay, I've already made my money. Whatever money I spend is now coming off my profit. So I want to make that movie quick. I want to make it cheap. So I think it's kind of weird because, like, there's some movies where I'm like, I really don't know who this movie was made for and how it made its money back. And then there's other movies where you go, okay, so much money was spent on this movie, but it vanished. Like, there was a Chinese movie a couple of years ago called Azura, and it was like a Chinese Lord of the Rings. That movie played for 2 days and then vanished and has never even made it to pirate DVD or online anywhere. And you go, okay, someone just pulled that movie. That movie just, someone got pissed off and it just disappeared. And you go, it's like even say Infernal Affairs. When I first arrived in Hong Kong, Infernal Affairs would have played for a week. People would have gone, yeah, okay. It's an okay Hong Kong movie. And it sounds bad, but when I saw Infernal Affairs, I went, wow. It kind of shows that the quality of Hong Kong film had fallen at that time. Because while I like Infernal Affairs, I much prefer To Live and Die in Chim Sa Choi, which is Andrew Lau's, low budget version of it. It's kind of like if you compare Heat to LA Takedown, the TV version, it's like To Live and Die in Chim Sa Choi is Infernal Affairs on a budget. And I think it's just it was a weird thing with the box office that, like, certain films, like, and I think sometimes as well it was hard for, like, overseas filmmakers to understand it. Like, when James Glickenhaus did The Protector, I don't think he understood the importance of Jackie's market in Japan or certain territories, and they were like, no, we have to have this image for Jackie in those territories. We can't have this. And to this day, there's still certain territories like Hong Kong TV. You can't show nudity. When Game of Thrones first came out in Asia, it didn't make any sense because they'd had to cut huge chunks of it for censorship. So you're like, why did that character kill someone? You're like, well, because he was having sex with his sister. I never saw that. because you're like, well, yeah, you didn't see all the nudity because they do bizarre screen grabs. This is how mad the censorship is. When I first arrived in Hong Kong, it was one of the TV channels, I think it was their 25th anniversary. So they showed a whole bunch of classic movies, including Emmanuel. And I was like, they're going to show Emmanuel on TV? And I was like, wait a minute, it's in a 60-minute time slot. You're like, I need to stay up and watch this. And they showed it at 1 o'clock in the morning. And you saw Sylvia Crystal go to the airport and get on a plane. And then the plane landed in Thailand. And I went, okay, no need to watch this anymore. Anything at all sexual or nudity was gone. And that's why, like, when the Category 3 thing happened, it was wild because the bizarre thing in Hong Kong is, like, how to say, like swearing. You come to Hong Kong for 5 minutes and you hear a lot of swearing in Cantonese and everything. But in movies, if you swear in Cantonese, it's immediately an NC-17 rating. It's immediately there's an issue. So, like, you've constantly got in Hong Kong movies people going, well, flip you and flip that. But then you'll hear them swearing in English. And it's that bizarre thing of, oh, well, if I swear in another language, I can get away with it. So, like, when we did the Sleeping Dogs video game, I was doing all the audio tracks in Hong Kong. And the woman at the recording studio kept asking me, mate, is there a problem? Because every time she turned on the feed, all she could hear was all these Hong Kong actors swearing like troopers. And I'm going, no, it's fine. Because literally I'd be like, oh, Eric, here's the script. Here's the bad language. If you have a more extreme version of that swear word or whatever you'd like, that curse, please go for it. So Samo, Eric Chang, all these guys like, mate, what if I say blah, 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 blah? And I'm like, if you want to, you can. And when Sleeping Dogs came out in Hong Kong, there was a big thing because people's parents were going, my kid is playing this video game and there's all this foul language. So there's always been that weirdness in Hong Kong of, like, you know, what works, what's acceptable, what's acceptable. Like, they still refer to a lot of Hong Kong actresses as, like Shuke, as former porn stars. When I first came to Hong Kong, there used to be, how to say, a lot of tabloid press. Like, there used to be these very glossy magazines that came out on Sundays with pictures of scantily clad actresses and down blouses and upskirts that you were like, wait a minute, cameras back then were huge. So you obviously knew there was a cameraman doing something. But those magazines were, in Cantonese, were called Bapor Japji, bitchy magazines. And they sold incredibly well. And then there was like a court case here where a guy had pretended to be a producer to sleep with all these actresses. And in true Hong Kong fashion, they were like, you know, we're going to preserve the anonymity. So, you know, we can't say, you know, Eric Jacobus, so we'll say, Mr. J. And then they say, oh, so Mike deposited this much money into Mr. J's bank account, and they printed the bank account numbers. So people would then go to the bank and go, I'd like to deposit 50 cents into this account number. Oh, it's Eric Jacobus. It's, you know, and there was all this madness, and it's still that thing of like, oh, if an actress is, you know, if an actress is playing a sexy role in Hong Kong, there's an issue with it. Yeah, there's still this kind of like, oh, she's trying to be sexy. You know, there's still a kind of sexist. It's very weird. You know, that sometimes Hong Kong can be incredibly conservative, or at least pretend to be.
Is this a similar sentiment in mainland China to any extent?
Yes and no. I mean, one of the big problems in China is, honestly, there's only one film classification in China, and it's general. So the problem is, there's constantly people going, okay, well, can we get away with this? Like, when, what was the Wolverine movie? The last Wolverine movie.
Logan?
Yeah. When that came out in China, they actually put up at the cinemas and said, this is not suitable for children. This is not this is not a kid's superhero movie. You know, so and it's that same thing that you go, how to say, in China, Hong Kong, there's a lot of stuff going on that people go, we're not gonna look at that. It's kind of like Singapore. Like, Singapore will often go, oh, Hong Kong has this red light district and all this bad stuff going on. And you go, Singapore, you have the same thing. Oh, no, mate, that's not a red light district. That's a controlled area. And you're like, wait a minute, that's the same thing.
That's a special economic zone.
Exactly. We called it something different so we could get away with it. So, I mean, the same in Malaysia and everything. There's all this stuff where you go, wait a minute, you're censoring this while there's a flashing neon sign here advertising the very thing. It's like when piracy was super crazy for film, certain Hong Kong producers were like, well, my movies are being pirated. I'm going to be involved in the piracy because I'm going to make some money out of it somehow. So like a couple of producers had times where the police would raid the factory and be like, and then call you up and go, Eric, we found the master tape of, Immortal. And you'd be like, yeah, I gave it to that guy. Yeah, because he was going to give me 20%.
Yeah, I'm getting a cut. Exactly.
Like he was going to pirate it anyway. So I might as well go, okay, I'll give you a master. I'll give you that.
That's a very pragmatic approach to crime. Do you think that pragmatism comes from sort of pragmatic approach to triads as well in organized crime?
Oh yeah, I mean, you have to understand. Officially in Hong Kong, just by saying you're a triad, the police can arrest you. That's breaking the law. But I'm like, really? Go and hang out in any bar area in Hong Kong and there's a million people. I'm a triad, man. I'm going to kill you. Blah, blah, blah. So there's always been a lot of that in Hong Kong. Like when the British were here, like I remember I'd been here, I think 6 months to a year, and I did a job for the BBC. And the BBC were trying to show, we're going to buy some illegal copy watches. And I was like, oh, easy. We just go to the market and we can go to Eric's shop and there you go. No. What we want is to have Eric standing in a dark alleyway motioning us to come over, opening his jacket. I was like, that's not how it really is.
That's definitely the Victorian kind of conception of what crime looks like. Yeah.
Yeah. So, okay, I have to tread carefully here. There was a policeman in the early 90s who is a friend of mine, and at one point he was a very senior policeman, and somebody in his office went, I've been looking at some figures, and you've been a policeman for this many years, yeah? And even if you hadn't spent $1 of your salary, how do you have this much money in the bank? You're questioning my integrity. I shall resign. And everyone was like, see, he resigned. And I was like, I think that's an admission of guilt. And they're like, no, he resigned. I was like, okay. So there's always been that kind of thing. I mean, that's why, in the 70s, honestly, like in the 60s, 70s, there used to be a section in the South China Morning Post, the main English language Hong Kong newspaper, called In the Red. And it was and it would list all the people who'd got robbed. Because people would just walk up to you and go, give me 100 Hong Kong dollars, like $10. No? Okay, I'll slash you on the ass, slash you on the behind with a knife. And then you'd report it. So the newspaper would list, Mike Leeder, Eric Jacobus, Ruben Langdon, Steve Johnson, all got robbed yesterday. And I was like, I don't know if that's a good idea to list all those people. And you had like the corrupt cops here and like when we did the Donnie Yen movie Chasing the Dragon, we were doing a lot of the research, and there's an interview with one of the corrupt British cops, and he's basically trying to claim that the reason there was a big fuss about it wasn't because he was a corrupt cop, but because he was a white guy. Yeah, he's like, there's lots of other people stealing money, but just because I'm a white guy, they made a big thing of it. And you're like, no, wait a minute, they actually arrested a shit ton of people. But it was like, it had got that crazy that if your house was on fire and you called the fire brigade, they would turn up and expect you to give them some money before they turned on the fire hoses.
So this is kind of, would you say though that this is sort of the expected way of dealing with crime in a sense, is Like, I keep
And
calling it pragmatic because if
kind
it's
of,
just
there's always been a lot of that, of like how things are dealt with. Like, I'm a white guy, so I'm a Guilo. I'm a foreign devil. Back in the day, there always used to be think people, oh, it's Guilo privilege, because the cops and everything sometimes will go, oh, I don't want to get into trouble. Maybe that guy is connected with someone, so we'll let him go. A couple of years ago, I was shooting a movie, and I'm down an alleyway with a machine gun, covered in blood, with a young Chinese AD ready to cue me. And round the corner comes 6 Hong Kong police riot squad. So I lower my gun and I'm like, hey guys, how's it going? The police come walking up, they look at me, they look at the young Chinese AD, and then they ask the young Chinese AD, okay, can we see your ID? And he's like, there's a white guy with a gun. And they're like, we're not asking him, we're asking you. And for the rest of the day, he was like, oh, there's Guilo privilege, Guilo privilege.
he clearly has a reason to have that gun if he's a white guy.
Basically, that was the thing. And then the producer, Wong Jing, was like, if you see Mike with a machine gun in an alleyway, he have a reason to be there. You're like, and there used to be this craziness, like in the early 90s, there was a big drug bust in Hong Kong. I think it was like 1990, end of 1991, beginning of 1992. And who were the people arrested for dealing drugs? The British Army. It was a huge drug deal with the British Army and the triads. And the same unit of the British Army had to leave Hong Kong because the government got tired of the lunacy. They were racing cars up and down the runway and all this craziness. And you'd like, when the British were here in charge, the British Army guys would get drunk and go into bars, wreck them, and make all these problems. And you'd be like, this is kind of ridiculous. But it was kind of like, oh, well, they're the Brits. It's kind of accepted. And there's always been this kind of thing. And I think it's just, as you put it, it's pragmatic. In Asia, there's a lot of like, okay, we could go to court and we could try and deal with this. Or maybe I can just go and smoke a cigarette with you and have a chat. And we'll have a very brief personal exchange. And then everything goes away and things. Like, I remember when the old airport closed, they opened a go-kart circuit there. And a friend of mine was running it. And he'd asked me about something. And I said, well, the first thing you should do is you should talk to the local triads and make sure everything's covered. And his boss was like, yeah, we can't deal with gangsters, blah, 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 and calls the police and basically try to say, oh, we were talking to this guy, Mike, and Mike said, well, we should talk to the police, the triads. And the police went, yeah. Because the police were like, yeah, we're not gonna station cops here every night. The gangsters can't. So they were like, what Mike's trying to tell you is it might be easier to just go, okay, can you guys take care of the parking for me? And blah, 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 blah. And it's settled as opposed to it being a war zone. Right. And sometimes that's what, like, in Chinese culture, face is very important. So the same thing. Sometimes it's just a case of like, okay, let's have our little thing and give this person respect, and then everything will be fine. So I think, pragmatism is probably a very polite and diplomatic way of saying.
Yeah. So do you think that this might have been a wake-up call for mainland Chinese investors coming into Hong Kong leading up, after Deng Xiaoping and leading up to the handover? Was there sort of a learning process when they were coming in and working within the Hong Kong economy?
Kind of the same way you got to understand is like what people don't really talk about is until about 1993, Taiwan wouldn't let any mainland Chinese actor be in the movies. I was with some friends and they wanted to see the Stephen Chow movie, Got a Gambler's 3, Back to Shanghai. And we went to the cinema in Taiwan to see it. And there's a totally different actress to Gong Li in it. And I'm like, wait a minute, that's not Gong Li. And they're like, no, of course not. This is Taiwanese actress so-and-so. I was like, yeah, but Gong Li's in it. No, she's not. I was like, and then that's when I found out that Taiwan would go, oh, okay, this guy's from mainland China, not allowed. Which is kind of funny because now when China does that, everyone's like, oh, see, China's being bad. I'm like, wait a minute. Like when I first arrived, China was still here be dragons. Like I remember going, this shows how long ago it was, going to Beijing Wushu School. And I was a young, skinny lad. Jeff Falcon was like, you need to go to Beijing Wushu School. You know, and I was young and skinny and had long hair. And it was insane because it was still okay. Like you'd check into the hotel and you'd be like, you haven't given me a key. And they're like, oh, no, no, no. This is Eric. If you want to go to, if when you need to go to your room, Eric will let you in. Yeah, but what if I go out? I'll just wake up Eric when you come back and he'll let you.
Yeah.
And you realize, oh, hang on a minute. This is so they can keep an eye on me. I remember when I was doing The Mummy 3, I was flying from Shenzhen to Beijing. You know, Shenzhen's just across the border from Hong Kong. And it used to be, if you had Hong Kong money meant something. It was like, oh, you got Hong Kong, I'll give you a better deal. And I was in a taxi and we got to the airport and I started to pay the guy in Hong Kong dollars. And he was like, no, 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 no. I was like, it's okay. You can give me the change in RMB. And he was like, no, I don't take Hong Kong dollars anymore. They're not worth as much as Chinese money. And I was like, oh, things have changed. And even now, if you say to me, hey, Mike, do you want to get paid in Hong Kong dollars or RMB? I'll be like, well, 30,000 RMB is a lot better deal than 30,000 Hong Kong dollars. So suddenly the economy's changed. And I think that's where a lot of people kind of got thrown off because you suddenly got to the point where like Chinese investors and companies are like, hey, we want to hire Tom Cruise. How much money does he want? And you're like, Tom Cruise is 25 million US upwards. Okay. And you're like, no, 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 but Tom Cruise needs to read the script and he wants to discuss it. No, no, mate, how about if we pay him $30 million? And you're like, no, the reason Tom Cruise has a lengthy career is he's taken interest in what he's doing. But a lot of China companies are kind of like, yeah, but we've decided we want Eric. How much money does Eric want? And you're like, no, hang on, Eric's going to want to read the script or Eric's going to question things. No, 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 we just want it. And it's why I've always said one of the great things about Hong Kong and China is the spontaneity. But also sometimes the bad thing is the spontaneity because sometimes you're going, if we just planned a little bit more, we had a little bit of prep, like when we did Chasing the Dragon, I was writing the English script on set every day because they'd be like, okay, Mike, so this scene is going to be Andy and Donnie and this guy talking about this. And they'd give me a super rough translation. I'm like, Mike, you write some English dialogue. And in the English dialogue, mention prostitution, drugs, and murder. Okay. And suddenly, oh, Mike, now this guy's on set as well. So add him to the scene. And you're like, this really intimate scene has now got 10 people in it. And I was like, this is a big movie. And, we were still every day like winging it. But then you'll do a movie like when we did Customs Frontline last year, Nicholas Jere movie, which is Nicholas Jere is a god, is all I'll say. Nicholas Jere is awesome. That movie, we had a proper English script. Changes in the script were discussed. Everything was made sure. Let's make sure that everything makes sense. And it was fantastic. But you go, sometimes on a Hong Kong movie, it is very much you're getting on a roller coaster and you're being released. It's like I don't know if Ruben mentioned it, like when we were doing the medallion script kept changing like randomly. Like you'd be like, is this scene meant to be a huge action scene? Because in the script it was this, but okay, now it's going to be that. And sometimes that's the problem that you're going, we need a little bit of thing. That's why a good Hong Kong movie is so good.
Yeah.
And sometimes a bad Hong Kong movie is so bad because of the thing. The same way, that's why when a lot of Hong Kong actors or directors go to the West, they find it's very thing because, why are you doing this? What, you can't change that. You can't discuss that. We need to know. Like when we did Man of Tai Chi, Keanu Reeves was like, I need to know how many days this fight scene is going to take. And Yul Ping's like, yeah, well, however long you want me to take it. And Keanu's like, no, if you tell me it's 4 days, I'll give you 4 days, but I need to make a schedule, a proper schedule, because people were flying in and out. It couldn't be thing. Whereas on a lot of Hong Kong movies, it could, like when we did Fearless, the end was I think 10 days straight of just action. And Ronnie Yu would come in for a couple of hours to shoot the dramatic beats, but it was very much Yuen Ping was running the set, and that's why sometimes you'll watch a movie like, and you'll sometimes see the tone change because the drama director has left, and suddenly now you're in charge, and you're like, oh, well, I'm going to make this. Like, we shot a scene for Fearless where I'm introducing JC Lawyer, who's the boxer who fights Jet Li. And Yuen Ping came up with this great idea where as I'm getting them to fight, JC Lawyer gets too excited and attacks Jet Li. And I end up slapping JC Lawyer and pushing him back and all this. And we shot it, and they shot this awesome camera crane coming down to catch it all. And then Ronnie Yu was like, I know nothing about this. Cut. And I was like, because he was like, it doesn't make sense for the tone. So, as I said, it's sometimes, it is that thing of going, can we just have a framework? And of course, we're going to adjust it. Yeah.
So Japan has probably a similar, maybe even more kind of structured production style than America. What I've noticed is that there's a lot of Japanese actors who came over to Japan, and some of them even starred, like Yukari Yoshimo's star of movies. But it was very rare. In fact, almost never do you see a Hong Kong actor starring in a Japanese film.
Yeah, that's what's always I feel saying that in Hong Kong, you go, there have been Hong Kong actors, China actors, Taiwanese actors, Japanese actors, Malaysian actors, Korean actors becoming stars. But yeah, it doesn't seem to go the other way. It's a very weird.
It did in America, but otherwise, no.
Yeah. Like with Japan, it's so regimented. Like when I used to run Impact, the hardest thing sometimes was dealing with Japanese companies, because I'd be like, hey, I'm doing an article on Beat Takashi. Can I get some images from Sonatine and from Boiling Point and from Violent Cop? How long is the article going to be?
How many days are we shooting this thing?
No, exactly. And I'd be like, well, I don't know, because if you don't give me any pictures, it will be one page. If you give me 1,000 pictures, well, we need a word count, and I'd be like, I can't guarantee that it won't get edited. Oh, then we can't give you images. We can't give you this. We can't give that. And the same way, sometimes when you're trying to cast Japanese actors, their schedules are so insanely booked. Because basically, Monday to Friday, Japanese actors are doing film and TV. Saturday and Sunday, they do commercials. And they're booked months in advance. And it's the same way. It's a little bit off topic, but like in Hong Kong, sometimes and China, sometimes the frustrating thing is people will be so concentrated on the short term. So I'll call up and go, hey, I'm doing this movie. I'd like Eric to talk to the director. Eric is busy. And I'm like, yeah, but look, my plan is, I know Eric's busy, but let's get Eric on a call with the director and the producer so they fall in love with you and go, damn, Eric's busy at the moment, but he's really cool. Let's keep him in mind for something else. But a Hong Kong or China company will go, Eric is busy. And then months later be like, what was it about? And you're like, well, it was for X-Men, or it was for this. And they're like, oh, can we arrange a meeting now? And you're like, no, the opportunity is gone. So, but no, Japan, it's strange. Like Korea is some Hong Kong. There's been a couple of movies in Korea where Hong Kong actors have gone over and starred in the movies. Like bizarrely, at the beginning of the 2000s, Leon Lai was huge in Korea. So he made a whole bunch of action movies in Korea. Like science fiction action movies that never came to Hong Kong, bizarrely. It was like, but he was huge in Korea. Same way Cecilia Jung and like Cynthia Khan, Joey Wong. Like it's that weird thing of certain people. Like sometimes you'll go to somewhere like Korea or something, and you go, wait a minute, like this person is being used to promote this thing over there. You know, like, but in Hong Kong, that's a totally different market for them. It's thing, but yeah, it's weird that now you say it, you really suddenly go, wait a minute, I can't think of any Hong Kong actor who went on to have a career. They might have gone and done a cameo or whatever.
I can think of one star that did a Japanese movie from Hong Kong was Wang Yu. He did his Zatoichi movie with the one-armed swordsman. Yeah. I can't think of a single other one.
But that's what I'm saying. Like they do one, like Eric Chang, and Eric Chang did movie Sleepless Town with Takashi Kaneshiro and everything. Now Takashi Kaneshiro is very interesting because he's Taiwanese Japanese, and he was super Taiwanese until the Taiwanese government went, you have to do your military service. At which point he went, I'm half Japanese, you know. Yeah, and went back to Japan. You know, and it's that weird, but yeah, like a lot of Hong Kong actors will go to Japan or Korea and do maybe one movie as a co-star or a co-lead or whatever, but they don't make a career of it. Whereas exactly in Hong Kong, there's always been that thing of like, if you click with the market, it's you can be any nationality, anything. Yeah. Like Cynthia Rothrock, when she worked, it was gone. Oh, this white girl works. Okay, let's have her as a lead. But then bizarrely, they've never really tried again. Yeah.
So I'm very interested in your perspective on the Korean stuntmen that came over to Hong Kong in the late 70s and early 80s, and how they became stars. And how did that transition? What was that process? And did they speak the language more easily? Why did they fit? And why also they also fit really well with the action style?
Like Jackie and Samo both speak very good Korean. Like Samo's first wife was half Korean. This is a very bizarre thing. Back in the early 2000s, myself and the late great Lynn Hayes, who was a super kung fu movie fan, we tracked down Wong Jun Lee when everyone was like, Wong Jun Lee is in hiding. It was very bizarre. Like, and in the way of just the world being weird, I'd met Wong Jun Lee by accident when I first came to Hong Kong. I met him in the post office. It was like, oh my God, you're Wong Jun Lee. And he was kind of like, you're a strange white guy. Like,
I'm trying to mail a letter, sir.
Yeah. He was like, I'm mailing a letter. What's wrong with you? Like, because when I first came in Zali, I'd be like, oh my God, I just saw Moon Lee in the supermarket. Because in England I wasn't used to seeing movie stars in supermarkets and shit. So like the funny thing with Wong Jun Lee was Lynn Haynes and myself have been trying to find him. And then one night I bumped into a friend of mine who used to be a Korean air stewardess. And she was with a guy called Jason. And she goes, oh, Mike, this is my friend, Jason Wang. And I went, Jason Wang, let me guess, your dad's Wong Jun Lee. And he went, yeah, he is. And I was like, this guy's funny. He's awesome. Had a chat, had a laugh, blah, blah, blah. A couple of weeks later, me and Lynn Hayes like, okay, we've tracked down Wong Jun Lee's son. So I call this number and I'm like, hi, can I speak to Jason? Yeah, this is Jason. Hi, Jason, my name is Mike. Oh, hey, Mike, how you doing, man? And I was like, what? And he's like, yeah, we met. We're the same thing. And I was like, oh, God. So I went to Korea, got hold of Wong Jun Lee. We shot a great interview for Hong Kong Legends. This is back in the days when we had real tapes. I FedExed the tapes from Korea to England immediately because they needed them. And then the tapes got lost in England.
No!
So this was 10 years before Wong Jun Lee resurfaced. But one of the funniest things had been when I was in Korea to interview Wong Jun Lee had arrived with his entourage. And at the beginning, he was being a little bit standoffish until I went, oh, Master Wong, Roy Haran sends his best, and this person says hello. And he was like, oh, you know those guys? And we get chatting. And I was like, everyone thinks you're in seclusion. He goes, no. He goes, the reason I didn't call anyone is when I moved to Korea, one of my bags didn't come. And in that bag was all my phone contacts. So he was like, do you have Wong Jun Lee's phone number? He was like, do you have Roy's phone number? Do you have this person's number? I was like, yeah, sure. And he explained the whole thing of kicking Jackie Chan's bridge out on Snake in the Eagle Shadow, and was very funny about it. Like he was like, I didn't think he was going to be a big star. I flew back to Hong Kong, and I was shooting an interview with Jackie Chan for British TV, and we're shooting the interview, and Jackie at the beginning is in autopilot. He's answering the questions he thinks being asked. So he's doing the whole, Bruce Lee did this, I do this, Bruce Lee kicks high, and the director's going, these aren't the questions that I'm asking him. I was like, no, we're going to ask him something different. So I'm like, oh, hey, Jackie, who's better, Gene Kelly or Fred Astaire? Oh, Gene Kelly. Gene Kelly is a Hong Kong action star. Yeah, blah, 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 blah. Fred Astaire, camera tricks, blah, blah, blah. We're changing the tapes. And Jackie's like, where have you been? I went, oh, I was in Korea. He goes, what were you doing there? I went, oh, I was interviewing Wong Jun Lee. And suddenly 25 years disappeared. And he was like, Wong Jun Lee kicked out my teeth. I was like, yeah. Like, do you have his phone number? I was like, yeah. He went, give me his number. I was like, oh, okay.
He wants to collect on that.
And he calls up Wong Jun Lee, and you can hear Wong Jun Lee going, oh, like, and Jackie's going, do you know who this is? No, I'm Jackie Chan. And he starts speaking Korean, and all I can hear is, ba 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 ba, Mike, ba 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 ba. And after about 5 minutes, Jackie hangs up and goes, oh, he's very nice. Yeah. But it was that thing of like, they'd cleared, but it was that weird thing of just, people lose a contact. And now we've all got it, you go, oh, I can't find Eric. I'll Google him. I'll think. Back in the day, you didn't have that. So you're like, I've lost my phone book. Right. I don't know how to contact these people. Even in the world of Google, I don't know where Jeff Falcon is. People keep asking me. Even the director of Six String Samurai was like, Mike, where's Jeff Falcon? I was like, I think he's in Taiwan. He's vanished. He's like King Arthur. He's gone into cover, and at a time of crisis, he will come back. But like with the Korean guys, a lot of Hong Kong filmmakers were going to Korea to shoot because it was cheaper and they could get good deals. That's why a lot of the low-ray movies, movies like Iron Fisted Monk and everything, were shooting there. Because also I think there was an issue with getting money out of the country. So I think there was a case of like, okay, your movie made $10 million, but you can only take $9 million out of the country. So I was like, okay, well, what if I spend $1 million in Korea? Okay, we'll give you a tax break, whatever, blah, blah, blah. So that's how Casanova Wong told me that he got recruited for Iron Fisted Monk. That he was just like, Samo was like, okay, I need some guys. And Samo was like, oh, okay, show me what you can do. Okay, now do this. Okay, now do that. Okay, you're now selected to be one of these things. And like Samo especially was the master of inviting people. Colin Chow, nice thing. He met Colin in a disco in Taiwan just before Colin did his national service and was like, this is my phone number. When you get out of the army, call me. And that's what Nice Thing did. And someone was like, come to Hong Kong. We're gonna groom you for stardom. So with the Korean guys, I think a lot of them realized there's an opportunity in Hong Kong. And a lot of the Hong Kong filmmakers were like, come on down. So you had like Wong Jun Lee, Kwon Young Moon, Elton, all these guys coming over. And then the funny thing was like, round about the 2000s, we had another wave, like, because suddenly Bruce Khan, Hyun Jin Park, aka Mong Cha Cha from Jackie's team, all these other Korean guys came. And in the late 80s, early 90s, there'd been Kim Wong Jin, the Scorpion King. I think it was just, as we said, because of the spontaneity thing, there's always been a thing in Hong Kong of like, okay, you want to be a stuntman? You want to do something? We'll give you a chance. And that's always one of the things where sometimes you'll be on set and they'll be like, we need, like, one of my old flatmates, very good friend of mine, was Mike Miller, Australian martial artist from Knockoff, once upon a time in China. The first time I ever heard of him was on Once Upon a Time in China 2, because they needed a white guy to get hit with an arrow. And they offered like another $10, basically. And Mike went, I'll do it. Because he thought the arrow was either going to be on a ratchet or it was going to be on a wire. And instead they gave him a piece of wood and put it under his jacket. But to show him it was going to be safe, they shot a Chinese stunt guy first. To show him it would be safe. But it was like, that's how I first heard of Mike Miller, because a stunt guy went, oh, you should meet this guy, Mike Miller. He's crazy. he let us shoot an arrow at him. And I was like, what do you mean you shot an arrow? They're like, we fired a burning arrow into his jacket. So there's always that thing of like, if you want to come and try, you can have that opportunity. So like, same with Kenji. When Kenji came, he began work as a kind of like stunt extra, and would talk to the stunt guys and they're like, oh really? You can take a hit? You can? Okay. Same with like, I think even with like Jude, when Jude Poyer did Downtown Torpedoes, originally I think he was an extra, and then they went, well, we need one of the white guys to get beaten up a bit, and Jude was like, I'm willing to do that, and they're like, really? Okay. And then through that, oh, you've got some skills. I'm doing another movie. You want to come and audition for that, whatever. So I think with the Korean guys, it was, especially back then, it was like, if you came to Hong Kong, there was that opportunity.
What do you think it was about the Korean performers? Because when I watch them move, they move like Hong Kong guys.
Exactly that. That there's something. They've got that snap. They've got
there's some rawness to it, though, right?
Yeah.
What do you think that is, Mike? And did Sammo and Jackie ever talk, or any of the other Hong Kong filmmakers ever talk about that?
I think it's just, how to say, like, I think the Koreans are very unquestioning. Like, so you can say to them, okay, I'm going to kick you in the head, and they'll go, okay. Whereas like other people go, wait a minute, you kick me in the head? I don't think that's a good idea. I think with a lot of the Korean guys, they came in, and because they have that like drilled into them with the Taekwondo and everything at school and everything, they've got that very like, Kenpai Senpai seeing thing of like, you're my senior, whatever you want me to do, I'll do. And it's like, I was in Korea one time to interview Jung Do-hong, and Jung Do-hong had just come back from like, I think he was shooting a movie in another country. And in the night, so he'd come back, and I was literally shooting him for the interview the night he came back. That night, about 25 Korean stunt guys came to visit him because they were just like, oh, Jung Do-hong has come back. I must come back. I must come and visit him. And Jung Do-hong was really embarrassed because he was like, I didn't set this up to show you how wonderful I am. But all these people were like, Jung Do-hong is back. I must come and say hello. I think I said like Jackie said that it was just the Korean guys are they're gung ho. They'll go for it. And I think they kind of get it faster than like some of the Japanese guys who've come. Like Kenji is a rarity. Kenji is very special because Kenji and Yuji, etc., Yuji Shinomura, etc., they grew up watching Hong Kong films, and it was their inspiration. So even though they were doing their karate training and everything, they were going off and learning and trying Hong Kong style on their own and everything. A lot of the Japanese guys came and were very like, no, this is how it is. That's why, like, say with Karada clicked. Like, Richard Norton's mentioned it, that when he was working on Twinkle Lucky Stars, Karada a few times went, don't talk, just listen and do what they say. Don't get killed, but like, don't be trying to be like, no, this isn't the right way to do it. There's nothing, And yeah. I think sometimes that's the problem, that it's very easy to come in and go, no, there's a different way to do this. Like, like if you've been to film school, you come to Hong Kong and you'd lose your mind because suddenly they're going, we're crossing the line and we're jumping here and we're jumping there.
I mean, especially if you look at Japanese cinema up until that point, you can kind of imagine why someone like Sonny Chiba, for example, if you were to go to Hong Kong, he's coming from Toei. He's got like 20 years of the best cinema in the world behind him. And they have a way of shooting things where it's on the star. You don't follow the stuntman down. You're on
exactly.
The star. And so why would I listen to these guys?
No, and I think that's the thing. That's why I think for Sonny Chiba, he never really was able to adapt to the Hong Kong style. Whereas like Hiroyuki Sanada on like Roaring Fire, and when he came over for like Royal Warriors, etc., everyone was like, oh my God, he understands it. He came in and was like, this is what I can do normally. Bah, 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 bah. What do you want me to do? Yeah, he didn't come in and be, no, this is how I shoot it. And as you said, that's the thing. In Japan, the camera's following you. I could be doing the most spectacular reaction, but that's not the important part. It's you. Whereas in Hong Kong, like for Samo's like, I don't care about you. I want to follow that stunt guy going for a window, landing on his head, blah, 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 you know. And I think sometimes that was the thing. So I think the Korean guys, I think they just were a bit more adaptable. You know, they were like, okay. Whereas I think some of the Japanese guys were very regimented and very, this is what I'm used to. This is the way I've shot stuff recently. If you get hit in Hong Kong or you hit the actor, of course it's serious, but there's an understanding that, okay, well, we are making an action movie. Yeah, like, I think whereas in Japan, someone's like, you hit the fucking actor, like, dude, you're in trouble now. Whereas in Hong Kong, the actor will be like, you just hit me. This is not good, but we are making an action movie. So as long as I know you didn't do it on purpose, you weren't specifically trying to hurt me. So I think maybe it was just that, like,
yeah, Simon Reed talked about how in Korean films, the actors were much more willing to get hit. Even just actors were just much more willing to get hit and fall on the ground, do their own kind of stunts.
Oh no, I mean the same thing. You look at, say, Nina Lee in Tiger on the Beat, you know, Jet Li's wife. Just as an actress, she's getting flung around, and you know, when she goes over, like in the fight at the gym on the beauty salon, that's her going over the bench. You go to a Hong Kong or a Korean actor. We're making a movie, okay. Like if you watch the behind the scenes training footage for Shiri or for like Arahan, you see the actors being forced to train. Like there's one of the clips in one of the Shiri making ofs where basically they strap one of the actors to a stunt guy, and that stunt guy proceeds to slide into the splits, taking the actor with him. And you see the actor is not having a good time, but the actor's like, this is an action movie. I got to go with it. But at the same time, I remember talking to one of the guys from, like, Jung Do-hong was saying that the main actor, the Kim Yoon-jin, the girl in Shiri, who was also in Lost, they were all blown away, not because of her physicality, but just because she could turn her acting on and off. Like she'd be super emotional, cut. Oh, Eric, that was great, blah, blah, blah. Action, back to crying and hysteria. And they were like, we can't do that. You know, like, that's incredible. So I think, I said, the Korean guys, is like you see a Korean TV show or anything, and yeah, everyone's getting banged about. Whereas a lot of Japanese stuff is very idolish. You know, it's like, look at me, I'm a Power Ranger. You know, what I do is cool, but we don't care about everything else.
Yeah.
You know.
So when you look at Korean action, you know, there's a slew of, as you mentioned, there was a lot of Korean action done in the 80s and 90s that was released under very smaller labels, and they seem to be borrowing some of the Hong Kong style, but then they're integrating some of that very Korean style. Do you think that? What do you think Korean filmmakers were taking from Hong Kong in this kind of Korean wave, starting from Shiri?
I think they were kind of taking that you could do action and make it glossy. You can make it look cool. Because if you look at a lot of Korean films before, like Shiri and everything, it was very rough and ready. Like sometimes, or it would be over choreographed. It was either super rough and ready, or it was, this is a Taekwondo demonstration. This is not a fight scene, you know. And like, there's some of the Wong Jun-Lee movies where Wong Jun-Lee's doing great stuff, but you're like, okay, the camera is just locked off.
Yeah. Oh, the Dragon Lee did a ton of those movies, and it's just Taekwondo guys doing Taekwondo.
Yeah, so
it's very good Taekwondo, like, but
yeah, exactly. But I think they kind of went, okay, we can kind of do that John Woo thing, and like we can have, you know, high production value and still deliver the action. Whereas for a long time there was that thing of like, oh no, we're going to have super high production value, crappy action, or super good action, like, which has always been my problem with a lot of Taiwan films, that you'll see a big budget Taiwanese film and the action is terrible. And then you'll see a smaller budget Taiwanese film where the production value is a bit rough, but the action is totally insane. You know? And the same thing, like Taiwanese stunt guys are awesome. They'll do anything. You know, like
yeah, the kids, the Shaolin Kids series or Kung Fu Kids series, yeah.
Which you could never release now because you know it's child abuse. Yeah, and you look at them and go, thing like the late great Brad Allen, God bless him. the first time I ever heard about Brad was he was shooting a promo. They were shooting a test footage for a film in Australia that my godfather, the guy who became my godfather, Alip Sak, who was a Hong Kong Indonesian Chinese stunt guy, an action director, and he was working, and he was like, "Oh, there's this white guy here called Brad. He's really good." The funny thing was, Alip had brought in a whole bunch of like Taiwanese and Hong Kong stunt guys with him, but Alip could be very obnoxious. So Brad was like, "Oh my God, these guys are incredible." And Alip's like, "These guys are the worst stuntmen from Taiwan and Hong Kong." And Brad was like, "If they're the worst, holy shit, the level I need to be at to compete." So like Brad was like, "Okay." And then later on, Brad was like, "Wait a minute, that guy's an Olympic gymnast. Yeah, wait a minute, that guy is, a wushu champion. These weren't crap stunt guys." But Alec was like, "Yeah, but you can't give them too much praise, because otherwise they'll get cocky." So I think sometimes it's that thing of like, you go, like, you think about it now. When you started out, a Hong Kong spin was, "Oh my God, what did he do?" Like a 720. Oh my, how did he do a tornado kick? How did this happen? Like Scott Adkins has said it. It's very much each generation pushes that next generation. And I think one of the problems in Hong Kong is, for the longest time, Jackie always say, like, Hong Kong didn't have the special effects, so the Hong Kong actors had to be the special effect. They had to think. One of the problems in Hong Kong is, like, when I first came, I went looking for all the kung fu. And whereas in America or in England or in Europe, you get 30 people and maybe 5 or 6 people are studying martial arts. You go, wow, there's big martial arts school. I came to Hong Kong and it was like, nobody was studying martial arts. And if it, we lost 2 generations of stuntmen and action actors, because suddenly, round about, say, 1994, I would say, suddenly the market changed. It all became idols. It suddenly became, whereas before it was like, that guy might be ugly, but man, he can move. Suddenly it became, no, we're going to change everything. Like, even singers, like, there's a singer, Sammy Cheng. When she first came out, she was not fat, but she was a solid girl with a fantastic voice, kind of like Maria Cordero, whatever. But the market went, you're going to lose some weight. And suddenly she had to become super skinny to fit in. And I think that was the problem. Same with the action, that suddenly.
What do you think was driving that, Mike? Was this because in America, there was something really interesting happening in America around that time too, where the DVD covers became really lame looking, because I think that they were trying to appeal to a global kind of audience. And so
when they do that wonderful thing, like Infernal Affairs has some sexy girl with a gun, and you're like, who is that sexy girl? Yeah.
You think that this was an attempt for Hong Kong to say, like, okay, we're in an international market now. We need to bring a different sort of like international flair. And maybe they thought pop idols were the way to do that.
No, I think, unfortunately, Hong Kong film became a victim of itself, because for so long, it was almost like a guaranteed market. You could make that money. Like, I remember there's a director called David Lam who did movies like The First Shot, Hong Kong Gigolo and everything. And he's recently done, the Z Storm, P Storm, G Storm, whatever. I remember he was doing and prepping a movie, and he was like, "Oh, Mike, my next movie's going to make all this money." I went, "What's it about?" And he goes, "Oh, I don't know, but these are my 2 actors." And at the time, it was Lau Ching-wan and Anita Yuen. And it was like, "Okay, if they're in my movie, I know I can make money." And I was like, "Yeah, but what's the movie about?" And he was like, "That's not important." And I went, "Oh." And I think that was the thing that, people in Hong Kong lost that thing of like training. Like, okay, when they did the Twins Effect movie, for instance, the twins trained for a couple of hours a day for about a week. And for a couple of hours a day for a week, they did really good. But nobody would put in that time. Like, the same way, like, I remember Kenji was training Cecilia Jung for Tokyo Raiders. And suddenly they get this phone call, and there's a producer shouting at them because Cecilia Jung hurt her foot training. No, Cecilia Jung didn't hurt her foot training. She went out in the evening wearing high heels and was complaining that her feet hurt. And it was something Kenji was like, we're meant to be training her, but she comes 3 hours late and then she wants to leave 3 hours early. It's very, a lot of actors wouldn't put in the work. They wouldn't come in and train. I think maybe a lot of people got too successful. So there was no thing like, like when we did Genway Cops, the first couple of weeks, Edison Chen was totally unknown and was working his ass off. Yeah, he was like, I want to do everything. I want to train. I want to do everything. Then we had 2 weeks off, during which Edison became a superstar. And suddenly he didn't have time to come to training, and he didn't have time to come to rehearsals, and he wasn't going to get hurt doing this stuff. And I think a lot of Hong Kong people got too comfortable. So, people were like, I can't send my kids and force them to go training. I can't send my kids to go be stunt guys. Like, that's why you look at people like, say, Ridley Choi, and you go, Ridley was the last of the hardcore generation. Like, when I first came to Hong Kong, there used to be a thing called the ASSA, the Asian Stars Sports Association. And it was like kind of like a gym and clubhouse and swimming pool. And most of the stunt guys would just go there and hang out at the swimming pool. They wouldn't train, but they were working all the time. So their skill level was maintained. As soon as the industry slowed down, a lot of them, their skill level dropped because they didn't train. Whereas people like Ridley, Cho Wing, Paul Wong, and everything, they were all training still. So they maintained that level. But a lot of the guys went, because a lot of the guys, I think, had got into movies because it was a job. Well, I can get paid to do this. Okay. So I remember Daniel Wu, when he first started, was like, yeah, I kept asking Ken Lowe and everyone, when are we going to go and train? What are we going to, and everyone's like, why are we going to train? When we're on set, mate. But, Daniel was like, and that's why when he did Enter the Badlands, he was like, no, we got to have fight camp. We've got to prep. We've got to train. We've got to make sure people can do stuff. And the problem is, when you've got people like Samo or Jackie or Casanova Wong, whatever, you can wing it because they've got that knowledge, they've got the thing. Suddenly you bring in someone who's like, wait a minute, I don't understand this. What's this? Why am I doing that? Why am I doing this? And I've seen some accidents on set where you just go, oh, Jesus, because people who are just not used to it. When we were shooting Blood, the Last Vampire, there was a scene that was cut from the movie that I brought in 2 guys from LA, the Duff brothers, Jamal and John Duff, who are 7'4" twin brothers, African-American guys. And we're filming a fight scene with them and Gianna Jun Ji-Hyun. She's done a full 10-hour day on the drama unit and then come to the action unit. And Corey Yun is sitting there going, faster, more power, faster, more power. And in the middle of the fight, she sneezed and popped up. And one of the Duff brothers had thrown his fist. And I was like, oh, Jesus. And I literally watched it in real life in slow motion. And he went over her hair and punched through the wall and was literally, are you okay? And it was that thing where you went, if he'd connected, he'd have broken her face because he's a huge dude and the power. And it was like, you went, she's not used to it. She doesn't have that thing to go, I got to keep the thing. And that's where it's like last year when I did the movie with Nicholas Jer, I was really impressed with Nicholas Jer because he was doing everything, and his skill level is good enough that he can improvise. He can wing it. He doesn't need to be Pre-Viz City. He, like for the big end fight, it was old Hong Kong style. Okay, Nick has come into the room. What happens next? Da 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 da. Now what? And I was like, this is great. There'd been loose Pre-Viz for other scenes, but for the end fight, it was being made up as it went. And it was me and Brahim were both like, damn, Nick is of that level that he can wing it. And we were saying that was the hard thing that a lot of guys would have been, I need previs. I need to see, I need to know what's going on. I can't just wing it. I can't, this makes no sense. And I think sometimes now people are kind of spending too much time on the previs. And, like, I completely understand we've got to have an idea of what's going to be shot. I think sometimes it's almost like the previs has become too important and it's kind of lost sometimes that energy.
I completely agree with you, Mike. I think it affects performance and choreography alike, and it kind of dovetails into a kind of what I think is kind of a very stale shooting style of action. But what I wanted to ask about Nick Z was, what do you think it was about him, or what do you think it is about him that allows him to improvise? Is it the people who trained him? Is it just who he is?
I think it's kind of who he is. Like, I first met him on Gen X Cops, and he was worshiping Brad Allen, because Brad was working stunts, and Nick was like, I want to be able to do what he can do. Teach me. And at the time, it was like, well, you got to put in the work. And then the funny thing is, if Nick wanted to, Nick could be president of the world. But it's just, he's very like, I'm going to do what I want to do when I want to do it. So for a while, he was like, I'm going to be a celebrity chef. And that's what he became. I was shooting Abduction with Scott and Andy on, and Nick was in the same city doing some cooking show. And then suddenly he messaged me, he was like, oh, are you at this hotel? I went, yeah. He went, oh, so am I. I went, I'm going to bring you some food. He came in, delivered this food to me. We had a brief chat, and then he left. And the producer's wife was like, that was Nicholas Jet. Like, why did he just come and give you a whole bunch of food and leave? I was like, because he's Nicholas Jet. But no, Nicholas, I think part of it is he's got that thing of like, okay, I'm playing video games. I'm going to play video games to the very best I can. I'll spend days learning the secret codes and the secret move, blah, blah, blah. I'm cooking. I'm going to dedicate that. When he did Raging Fire, I think part of it was everybody from Donnie, from Benny Chan, everyone was like, Nick, you're fucking good. This is what we want to see you doing. And I think it kind of relit that fire. And like, he trains a lot with nowadays with Alan from Jackie Chan's team, who did all the fights for the Expendables, the new movie and everything. He's trained Wing Chun with like Philip Erg and everyone. And Nick's very physical. He's very thin. I think part of it was the same thing, is he almost came into the industry at the wrong time. He came in when everyone was moving away from real action and going, let's try and do the Matrix. Let's try and do CGI and wire work and everything for no reason. So he kind of got stuck in that thing of being like, that's not really what I want to do. This sounds really stupid. Like when we were prepping Customs Frontline, sorry, I keep getting the name. When we were prepping it, I just brought in Brahim Chab. I took Brahim to training, and Nick is training with the JC stunt guys, and he's not sitting in a divan smoking a cigarette being cool. He's sweating his ass off in a warehouse with everyone else doing exactly what's needed and playing the Police Story theme song to inspire himself to train. And then he was like, why are you laughing? I was like, the Jackie Chan stunt team are playing Jackie Chan songs to train. And he was like, let me call Jackie. And he called Jackie, and Jackie was like, why are you playing my song? What's going on? And Jackie couldn't seem to get the madness of it. Whereas like Kenji was like, wow, that's cool. Because Kenji and Yuji and everyone, I think it's online. There's a making of the Puma TV series, and Kenji and Yuji and Yoshida are singing the Police Story theme to get psyched up. And then Koichi Sakamoto from Alpha Stunts used to do the same thing. Because he was like, mate, you play that music and you want to jump off a building. You want to kick someone in the face. You want to get thrown down an escalator. And I think with Nick, it's just, he's very much, when he decides he wants to do something, he puts his thing into it. So like,
Yeah,
At the
that's
moment, he's
really
prepping Raging Fire Part 2. But like he's super mellow. He puts in a hard work. He'll take some bumps. Like there's a stunt that they put online from a custom film line where he does a Jackie, boom, 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 boom. And the first take, we were like, that was great, but it's you doing the stunt. Don't cover your face. Yeah, and he was like, oh yeah, good point.
he's
And he
such
just
a
got up.
he's such a
Yeah,
fan of Hong Kong action that he covers his face like a stuntman. That's a
yeah.
true
And
fan.
and that's sometimes the thing. Like when we were shooting Knockoff, my old flatmate Mike Miller is playing the coffin guy Tickler, and the same thing. He's doing this hard fall, and he kept bracing himself. And someone was like, "No, you're an actor. I need to see your face." So Mike had to take, and ended up getting concussion because it was like
Yeah.
you're landing on a heavy
Yeah.
container. Same with Kenji, that sometimes you're going, I gotta see your face. You know, I need to see a thing. And I think with Nick, he's like, he loves his Hong Kong movies. So like Customs Frontline is the action is very much, it's very Jackie Chan inspired. There's a lot of references. I think audiences are going to be really like very pleasantly surprised. But it's like he's putting in the work, like he's putting in the work that you do, that Ruben does. I mean, he's not going, bring in a stunt guy, let me do that, and I'll just do my hero shots. You know, he's going in and going, okay, and taking those hits and everything. And it's that same thing. You go, it makes it so much easier for everyone because you're going, okay, we're not wasting time of shooting it with a double, then coming back and doing the thing. And like we said before about Pre-Viz, you're keeping it fresh because it's really you. It's really the thing. And I think it's like, when the mood takes him, he'll very happily do it. And at the moment, he's in the mood for action.
Yeah. I think that when I hear you talk about him like that, it really just sounds like he's a huge fan, and more than a fan, he wants to do it. And
he's one of those guys that you can show him a clip from Pedicab Driver,
right,
and he'll be like, "Oh my god, that's so cool." Yeah, he's not like, "Why are you
yeah,
showing me a movie from 30 years
and
ago? What's the point?" Yeah,
yeah, and I think that so many of us relate to that, and that was what really drove that kind of indie action movement, is that we were all just sort of united in our. I don't like using the word fandom because we didn't just want to watch these things; we wanted to replicate them, and we wanted to actually do them.
I think it's finding that balance between fandom and fanatic. That like, sometimes I'm sure you get it. Like I get it all the time. Like people send me stuff, and I'm like, "That's great," but you're just copying Jackie Chan shot for shot. No, Mike, I've invented this choreography. I'm like, no, you haven't.
Yeah,
Like
that is kind of strange. I've seen that too. I mean, I've even seen people copy some of my fight scenes almost verbatim, and then they send it to me and they say, "Isn't this great?" And I go, "Like, you actually literally took my shots and movement from Contour." But I think that sometimes they don't even notice it because
no,
it's
I think
such.
that's part of it. Like the funny thing is, when you began exactly, you were like, okay, I want to do Hong Kong style. But you, even at the beginning, you were like, okay, let me bring something slightly different. Let me try. Like, you weren't just going, I'm going to recreate every single beat and just go, I invented this. So I think sometimes that's when like people don't get it. They'll send me stuff and I go, no, you're sending me, you're pretending to be Van Damme. Yeah, yeah. And I go, that doesn't work. Like you can't send me a reel where you're just pretending to be Van Damme because I understand what you're doing, but if I show that to a producer, they're just going to go, "Oh, you're pretending to be Van Damme." You need to have something that makes it your own. I always say Ruben does reactions in a way. If I hit you hard enough that you really had to do like a chow one, that's how Ruben does it. Like Ruben makes reactions look real. Because like when Ruben does a reaction, he does it hard. And you go, Jesus Christ. It's like he's not doing it showy. He's not doing it. And I think that's the problem. Some people didn't get that. And you go, I can see that you've mastered that reaction. But the problem is you've mastered it to the point where there's no. I know it's a trained reaction. Like going back to Brad Allen, like Brad at the beginning didn't realize that you could adjust speed on film. So Brad was like, I've got to be that fast.
Yeah, that is exactly the problem that we had when we were doing our first fights, and we would watch these Hong Kong fights that are shot at 20 or 22 maybe,
Yeah.
and we were trying to replicate that speed, and it created this like it's actually it creates a separate kind of action because now you can't hit that speed, so you end up sort of like, Hong Kong guys run in, they fight. Well,
Yeah.
in America, when we do that without undercrank, we run in and fight, and it causes like a little bit of a wrecking ball effect. And so
Yeah.
there's a little bit of mess to it. And it's sort of like developed into its own sort of action language where we're just trying to hit that breakneck speed.
No, and also, as I do, the problem is sometimes what people have, there's a great video clip with Kenji online, and it's especially because Kenji's in a cast at the time, and it's Kenji and Yuji on TV in Japan, and Kenji is trying to explain that it's not about the person fighting, it's about the person reacting. So Kenji does like wearing a cast, like a spinning hook kick on Yuji, and Yuji goes, and then Kenji goes, I have no power, and then flicks Yuji on the tip of his nose, and Yuji does a back somersault, smashes through a table, and Kenji's like, I have the most powerful fingernail. And it's that thing where you go, people forget that it's like, you've got to, it's not just you, it's got to be the first movie that Darren Shalavi ever choreographed was a movie called Hostile Intent with Matthias Hughes and Bridget Nielsen. And I remember Darren sent me this VHS and goes, what do you think? I went, you choreographed this, right? He went, yeah. What do you mean? I went, you don't get hit once. He was like, you noticed that? I was like, yep. Because he had a fight scene where he's fighting a whole bunch of guys and he's doing everything. He's doing beautiful kicks, spinning kicks, jump kicks, flying kicks, gymnastic kicks. But all the guys he's fighting are just, and you go, sometimes the thing where you go, people forget that. And like I said, and now because everyone's got access to everything, it's easy to forget that we've all seen that. Whereas, like, before you could carry off stuff and you could go, oh, people don't have access to that. I'm the only person who's seen Operation Scorpio, so I can claim this is my kick or whatever. And, but you go, as you said, I think sometimes people just don't get it that they're sending you stuff. And you go, okay, it's great that you're showing me you can copy it, but I need to see what you can actually do. Like, I know you can perform. When people go, oh, I'm a choreographer, I'm like, well, I need to see what you've choreographed. Oh no, I'm a choreographer. Look, I go, that's a Jackie Chan fight scene you've redone. Okay, at least it might show you know how to put together a fight and to edit and to get the angles, but that's somebody else's work. And it's the same thing, that I'll often complain about on social media is I go, people sometimes forget that the way you market yourself or the way you think, like, the world is very small. If you're bullshitting, eventually it's going to catch up with you.
Do you think that obviously it's very difficult to be a huckster on social media now, and you're going to be debunked immediately, but
not immediately, sadly.
Well, yeah, but probably quicker than you were back in 2000 on a forum.
Yeah.
Do you think now that people also in general, the audience, do you think that they're looking for more authenticity with action?
I think it's hard to say because I think the same thing. It goes for like there was that terrible shaky cam phase where you're going, you might be doing the best technique in the world, but I can't see what's going on. And like I will admit, I produced a movie where we had to do shaky cam because our main actor was terrible, and I was like, okay, let me shaky cam it. Because I was like, he can't do what we need him to do. We're going to have to shaky cam it.
But well, even Samo did some shaky cam stuff in the early 2000s. I think maybe, I don't know, did he think that was just what you were supposed to do?
Yeah, it's like, like remember when there was that brief period like Ashes of Time, Thunderbolt, Don't Give a Damn, where Samo was doing stock frames and what the fuck, everyone's playing around. And I think the problem is there's still that thing, both in Hollywood and in Hong Kong and everything, of, oh, that movie worked. We need to do exactly like that. Like, when everything has to be Hong Kong wire work for no reason at all. You're like, Daredevil, for no reason, we'll have a fight scene where everyone's on bad wires. And you're going, but this looks terrible. Like, it doesn't work. And then suddenly, okay, everything's going to be shaky cam. And then everything's going to be Matrix style, and for no reason we'll try and do 360 shots and everything. So I think, yeah, it's just, and I think with the audience, it's the same thing. I mean, the thing that kind of makes me laugh is that every time there's a female-led action movie, it's marketed as this is the first time ever. Like, not since Aliens, not since Tomb Raider, not since Terminator 2, not since Mad Max Fury Road, not since Atomic Blonde. This is the first female action movie ever.
Yeah, it's like saying, this is the first action film starring an Asian American. And it's like, hey, did you miss the entire '80s B film genre?
No, exactly. but it's marketed that way. I mean, I always remember, like, if you listen to the audio commentary on Mortal Kombat, the Robin Shou Mortal Kombat, one of my favorite moments to give Robin a hard time about is one of the producers says, this is Robin Shou. When we found him in China, he had incredible martial arts skills, but he couldn't speak any English. And I was like, hey, Robin, so you're at the Shaolin Temple? Robin was like, yeah, mate, when I was getting my degree in marine biology, I couldn't speak English at all in America, But it's that same thing. They're like, we've got to market it somehow. We've got to claim, and I think, but then it works the other way. Like, when we were doing Fearless, in the middle of the shooting, Jet Li, we had a press conference where Jet Li announced, this will be my final martial arts movie. And I was like, we were like, what? And then that night at dinner, I was like, but Jet, when we finish Fearless, aren't you going to Canada to do a movie with Young Quay? He was like, Mike, that's an action movie. It's different. And I was like, and if you watch the making of, I interviewed Jet a number of times, and he keeps saying, this is my final martial arts movie. And then later on, Jet was like, oh, Mike, I was misquoted. I was like, by who? He went, by myself. I don't understand English, and it's just, I understand marketing and understand hype, but sometimes I go, he's like, you couldn't release a video game. This is the first fighting video game ever. Right. This is the first driving game. Yeah. It's the first POV game. It's, I just think it's that thing. And I think, the problem is there was that weird period. It's like if you look at, say, Jackie's stunt team now. Most of Jackie's stunt team are either mainland Chinese or foreigners. They're either Germans, German Vietnamese, German Chinese. All the guys like Andy Long and Vidan and Max and everything, because I think Hong Kong got too comfortable. So people were like, why am I going to go and train? Like, what? A lot of Hong Kong people didn't want to put in that energy. So, like, if you look at, say, Philip Ng, 15 years earlier, would have been a huge action star because he could fight. I'm always like, Philip, you came at the wrong time. Andy On works his ass off, and like Andy's great because Andy is not a fighter by choice. But Andy's like, okay, I'll do it, But he puts in the work. But there's not as many movies. And sometimes it's trying to find the role. Like, if you look at, say, Wu Jing was always the guy looking for that role. Like, when they did SPL, the original idea was SPL will introduce Wu Jing to a modern day audience. And instead everyone went, that Donnie Yen's really good. And Wu Jing kind of got pushed back. And then with Wolf Warrior, boom. The same way Vincent Zhao, Juman Jerk, is still looking for that breakout role. And like, Vincent is awesome, but he just seems to make some bad choices and decisions. And I think some of the people around him don't help him the way they should. And I think that's where it's sometimes very hard. Like, I love Vincent, but sometimes the people around him are like, what are you doing? Like, you're picking fights with people for the wrong reasons. Yeah.
Well, when I asked, what it is with the audience today that might be looking for more authenticity, I think, because I'm thinking about The Raid, right? And the reason that The Raid was an international hit, despite the fact that nobody had ever heard of these characters. Nobody had ever seen these actors. Nobody knew who these people were.
What Salat was, exactly. Yeah.
Nobody knew anything. Nobody heard of Gareth Evans. I mean, unless you saw Moranto, right? Which is nobody. Nobody had seen it. So that seemed to be evidence that maybe physicality and maybe performance was actually becoming the star again. And do you think that has continued to be the trend?
I think it's kind of continued. Like, that's where I'm really happy with shows like Warrior doing so well, because, like, they're giving they're going, the action is integral to the story. You know, Warrior works really well on the drama side, and it's the action complements the drama and vice versa. That's why I think a lot of people didn't get first. It's like, if you look at the Raid movies, Gareth is as much the action director as Eco or Jude, whatever. You know, Gareth very much is not going, okay, you guys do it, and I'll just go along with it. Gareth is going, I want to do this. How are we going to do it? Blah blah blah. You know, like he's just as much a part of it, and I think that's what a lot of people forget, and I think that's why, even with Eco, like the stuff Eco's done without Gareth, some of it's good, but it's not been as thing. Like I remember when Kenji did G.I. Joe, he was like, I really feel sorry for the main guy, Henry. Yeah, because he goes, Henry trained his ass off, but as soon as Eco comes on screen, you go, okay, Henry, you've trained hard, but Eco has trained hard his whole life. You know, like part of the problem sometimes they think is they'll go, okay, we're taking this guy and we're forgetting that the stunt team and people around him were so integral to the reason they broke out so well. You look at Keanu in the John Wick movies, and then you look at Keanu in some other movies, and you go, oh, on John Wick, they're taking the time for the action. They're taking the thing. Like Gareth understands we've got to make the action thing. You know, a lot of the problem is when you're doing a schedule, a lot of people go, oh, okay, well, we can make all the action in 4 or 5 days. And you're like, no, we can't. Like when we did Abduction, a lot of the movie was shot at one location. We built multiple sets at one location. One of the ADs had done a schedule, and he was like, oh, this is the schedule we're going to use. I was like, we can't follow that schedule. He's like, but Mike, it makes more sense when you can't have a 3-day fight scene followed by a 2-day fight scene, followed by a 3-day fight scene, followed by a 2-day fight scene. He's like, why not? I went, because if this is all our main cast, and if one of them gets hurt, the whole movie is screwed. Yeah, so I was like, even though it would be easier because you go, we don't have to move the camera equipment, we don't have to move the lighting. I was like, we're going to do 3-day fight scene, then give everyone a couple of days to heal, then go back to do the next fight scene. Because I said, otherwise we're going to end up with, oh, now neither of our main actors can kick. Neither of our main actors can throw a punch. You know, so I think sometimes it's like, and I think the good thing is when it's done right, you go, yeah, people are buying into the authenticity. But what frustrates me is when they do that, and then, like, that was my problem with Extraction 2. Don't tell everyone, oh, we did a 20-minute single take. No, you didn't. It's like, guys, that take would be impossible. Just logistically, it would have been impossible. Because if you were 1 second out, you'd miss the explosion thing. And I'm like, if you're going to say that, then claim the whole movie is one take. Claim it's like Hardcore Henry, blah, blah, blah. I think sometimes they overestimate, this is going to sound bad, sometimes they overestimate the audience, sometimes they underestimate it. And it's finding that balance where you go, you know, audiences now are not like the audiences that first saw Rumble in the Bronx, that had never seen a Hong Kong spin, that had never seen thing like now, because of things like the UFC, the Joe public knows a chokehold. You know, they know this, they know that. So I think if you can find that authenticity, remember when there were the two MMA movies? There was Red Belt, the David Mamet one, and the David Mamet one, philosophy-wise and motivation-wise, is fantastic, but the action is terrible. And then Warrior came along and they went, let's make the action and the story work. And your Warrior is such a good movie because of that. So I think, yeah, if you can get that authenticity, I think the audience appreciates it. Yes, sometimes the audience will be going, oh, yeah, that actor did everything. And I think, like, I always get in arguments, like one of my friends runs an SFX company, and I'm always arguing with them about this for CGI. I go, part of the problem I find now is CGI has become so good that people do shots that you go, you do know the audience knows that's impossible. You know, when the camera begins inside your ear and then pulls out, goes through a wall, goes into Ruben's nostril, comes out through Jude's left leg, and you're going, you do know the audience knows that's a special thing.
And
obvious it's a
And
special effect.
that's why I wonder with stuff like Extraction too, where like yeah, I mean it's kind of clear where they hit all the cuts. It's clear in Atomic Blonde too where they hit the cuts
Yeah,
because clearly Charlize is not doing back rolls, two of them down a flight of stairs, and then
yeah,
you know they're covering the face, and then they do another whip pan, and now she's back. So, and I think that you know when designing stuff like this, they probably know that they're not trying to put one over on the audience. I think like maybe the audience nowadays is maybe we're often willing to be put over, and that's not put over, but we're willing to take a certain kind of very immersive action style, and we're more willing to suspend disbelief. Maybe we are more willing to say like, oh yeah, a camera could totally start inside somebody's ear because I've seen that in a video game, right?
yeah. And I think the video game thing, I think, is actually a very good point because the same thing now we all have access to that and everything. So it's like, remember when Tom Cruise shattered his ankle on the not the last Mission Possible, the Mission Possible before? Me, Kenji, and Donnie were discussing it, and Donnie said something very interesting. Donnie goes, "That's the difference between a movie star and an action star." We said, "What do you mean?" He goes, "There were 25 cameras on Tom Cruise when he did the jump, and Tom Cruise chose the back shot of him hitting and then him scrabbling up onto the roof and going away." Donnie goes, "An action star would have been boom, 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 20 different angles. Let me show the impact. Let me show that thing." He goes, "Tom Cruise is a different level because Tom Cruise is like, I just need the shots that work, that are going to sell the thing." The new Mission Impossible, the thing that frustrated me was I was like, you're doing all this really cool real stunt work, and then suddenly you got some really bad CGI on stuff that's like, wait a minute, that could be done in a set very easily. But the funny thing is, I remember like on the previous one, like some guy had some big issue with me on Facebook because he was like, "Oh, Tom Cruise and all that, it's so unprofessional. He endangers the thing." I was like, "Guy, I was like, you do know Tom Cruise actually put in the prep. It's not like the camera turned around and went, holy shit, Tom Cruise has jumped onto the side of a speeding plane. Tom Cruise has just jumped off a building." I was like, it was prepped. Yeah, I was like, unfortunately, sometimes accidents happen. Like we've all been on set and sometimes seen stuff happen that you go, oops. Yeah. Like,
well, you know what? This is actually, I mean, that comment that guy made is evidence that what Tom Cruise is doing is working because
yeah.
You are, by doing that, you're bringing out a sense of danger in people that I think most people can't pull off anymore. Like as an action movie, how do you actually nowadays make the audience go like, whoa, 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 because we are so used to video games, we're so used to CG, in order to actually evoke that kind of feeling, it takes a master.
No, no, 100%. And that's the thing that, nowadays with face replacement and everything, it's so easy to go, boom. And it's like, how to say, like when they were doing John Wick 4, like I remember Donnie talking to me. Donnie was like, Keanu is doing so much himself. Like Keanu is doubled when he has to be. But Keanu will lie down in the rain and do stuff that would be very easy to go, just bring in my stand in, just bring in the thing. And you go, that's sometimes the thing. You go, that's where the declination. I remember when we were shooting Man of Tai Chi, like Keanu was having back problems still. And he would like when he kicks Tiger at one point, like just after the eco fight, he was getting so upset with himself because he couldn't do the kick as sharp as he wanted it to be. And it was literally that thing where you're going, he was getting pissed off with himself, and you go, dude, like, but you go, that's why he's where he is. That's why Tom Cruise where he is. And I think, as you said, because they're putting it in. Whereas, it's like every movie, oh, this actor did absolutely everything. This actor jumped from space. But but with Tom Cruise, he really would.
He would do it. He would go up in a rocket ship and he would actually do it.
Yeah, it's why one of my favorite making of clips with Tom Cruise is from the making of the Mummy movie he did. And it's when they really went up in the vomit comet in the plane to do the thing. And the actress is going on about how excited she is. And Tom Cruise goes, "You do know why we're doing this on the last 2 days of filming, right?" She's like, "What do you mean?" And he's going, "If we die, they've already got the footage." He's like, "Because we've already shot stuff." And she's like, "What?" And he's going, "That's why we shot all the stuff on the revolving stage and everything." He goes, "The studio wanted to make sure we had enough footage before we risk our lives."
That was probably in the insurance deal, I'm sure.
Yeah. And I think that's the thing. But you go, Tom Cruise and all these guys, you can see when people are putting in the work. And I think, how to say, like, that was my frustration with the last Jackie Chan movie, The Ride On. Like, to me, I know Jackie's like in his 60s now, and I still love Jackie, but don't make a movie where you're specifically stating this movie is all real. This movie is all about how real I am and how there's no CGI and I did it all myself. And then have some of the worst CGI in the history of the world. To me, Ride On should have been kind of like the Burt Reynolds movie Hooper. Like, the opening of Hooper where you see the guy can barely get up and he's strapping his knee and I was like, that's what you want. You want to see Jackie like that because that's how Jackie is in real life. I remember going to his house once and you're like, "What's all this?" He's like, "Oh, because some mornings I can't stand up straight. So I have to go and force myself to stretch." And you go, that's thing. Same with Samo. Like when we were doing Ip Man 2, Darren Shalabi at one point knocked out Samo. Like basically when they're fighting in the ring, Samo was going, "I need you to hit me harder, blah, blah, blah." And Samo stumbled and went right into an uppercut from Darren. And Samo went down and all the stunt guys rushed. And I'm like running after him, going, "Oh, Jesus." But Samo was like, "No, no, no. I asked him to hit me." Samo was like, "Good take." But you're going, Samo was like, "Okay, you hit me. It's not what I wanted, but I know you didn't do it on purpose. And we're making an action movie. There's going to be a thing." I think that's what sometimes people forget. You go, of course, there's, in a perfect world, you'd never pull a hamstring. You'd never get hurt. You'd never do a thing. But you go, sometimes, on abduction, I managed to basically break my sternum with my chin because everyone was like, "Mate, when you get hit and go down, make sure you tuck." And I tucked really hard. And it was like, everyone's like, "What are we going to do?" I was like, "We're going to finish the fight." Why? Because I ain't coming back tomorrow, And I had to, and we shortened the fight, but it was like, I've got to finish it with the thing. But you go, it was nobody's fault. It was just a chance and a thing. And I think, as you said, Tom Cruise, he's putting in that work. Yeah, I'm sure. But it's like when people think, people go, "Oh, but when he was hanging off the side of the plane, he had stuff on his eyes and everything." I'm like, yeah, but you do know he was strapped to the side of a jet plane flying, and if anything went wrong, he couldn't get off the plane. It's it's like, so I think, as you said, it's if you can make it authentic, if you can bring that back, because as you said, the problem is now we're so used to that guy just sat in front of a green screen for the whole movie and blah 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 blah.
Well, and I think the audience can, in an intuitive sense, I think the audience is a pretty good lightning rod for whether or not something is authentic.
I think that's also why Maverick did so well, because you knew those people were really in planes. You could see people were really suffering from the G's and everything.
Yeah.
It wasn't just me sitting there going, "Oh yeah, I'm pulling 25 G's. My hair is perfect." Blah, blah, blah. It was people looking messed up and everything. And I think, as you said, the audience is a lot sharper these days. So people will go,
Mike, do you think that maybe, I mean, I have a theory that, a lot of the early kind of like, MGM, for example, and the fixers and all this, and them trying to craft the perfect star image. I think that maybe some of that was perhaps misplaced, and maybe they overestimated the audience's desire to have a perfect hero. And that, I don't know if the audience ever really wanted a perfect hero, and it seems to me that audiences always want some level of authenticity and some level of danger in their action films.
Yeah, of course you want, and I think that's the thing that people get. Like, prime example, Gene Kelly. I love Gene Kelly, and like Gene Kelly, The Three Musketeers are one of my favorite movies. And Gene Kelly is pulling off some Hong Kong style stuff. He's also being artfully doubled at times for certain things, and it doesn't take anything away from Gene Kelly's performance. And it's the same thing. I have nothing where you go. It's like I remember Yunhua saying to me about when he was doubling Bruce Lee. He was like, if Bruce Lee had had time to go and study gymnastics, I'm sure he could have done it as good as me. But Bruce Lee was like, I need someone to double me. You have the skills. You also have the same kind of physique. That'll do perfectly. And I think, as you said, we're watching a movie. We know Tom Cruise isn't really killing people. So he's like, you don't need to go, I'm sure Tom Cruise did everything shot. I always joke, like, I doubled Scott in Abduction because we had to do a whole bunch of insert shots. So I'm Scott's hand. And I'm like, I got to double him. It's like, ha ha ha. People forget that sometimes, exactly, you just go from a insurance thing, from a convenience thing. It's like if you go all the way back to, say, Yes, Madam, when Michelle Yeoh is fighting Chung Fat, and for some reason, Chung Fat, who is one of the best stunt people in the history of Hong Kong cinema, him and Michelle Yeoh, their timing just didn't work. So they brought in Chingalok to double Chung Fat. And to this day, Chingalok's like, oh, Chung Fat hates me because of that. Because it was like, yeah, it just doesn't work. The same way, if you watch Line of Duty 4, when Cho Wing is fighting Donnie, Cho Wing proves how good he is because he's fighting Donnie at 1,000,000 miles an hour. And then Cynthia Khan runs in to take over the fight. And in the same shot, Cho Wing slows down to make Cynthia Khan look better. Because Cho Wing knows, well, if I'm going at 1,000,000 miles an hour and she's going at 500,000 miles an hour, it's not going to look as good. So, like, he ducks under Donnie's kick. I think he does a kick over Donnie, like lightning fast. And then he slows down his kicks to fight Cynthia Khan. And that's not taking anything away from Cynthia Khan. I think she's awesome, but she was not the same level as Donnie, I think. But you go, there's nothing wrong with being doubled. Sometimes it's just thing. And of course, as we said, we're making a movie. I'm sure you've done it with motion capture sometimes where you go, well, actually, that was somebody else who came in for one day to do that bit, or
yeah, and then they go and claim that they did the entire game. But yeah, that's a different issue.
And that's always the problem. That it's like when we did Big Brother, I remember Big Brother with Donnie was just coming out, and some guy in Hong Kong was like, "Oh yeah, I'm so looking forward to this. I have a fight scene with Donnie." I was like, "Who the hell are you? Like, what are you talking about?" And they decided they wanted to do a blurry shot of Jess's character meant to be like. Just you'd see a blurry shot and Jess had left. So they used this guy. Then they realized he doesn't have anything like the physique. Didn't use it. And I was like, dude, you didn't have a fight scene. It's like when we did Expendables 2, one of the best bits of casting I ever did was I cast Randy Couture's shoulder because Jet Li hadn't gone to Romania. So we shot all the Jet Li stuff in Hong Kong. And I had to do a shot where Jet Li pops up behind Randy Couture. And I was literally at the gym going, excuse me, how would you like to be in the Expendables 2? Oh, yeah, I get to be in the movie. Yeah. Just your shoulder with a tattoo on it, just so Jet Li could peek around it. And then the guy was like, oh, yeah, I worked in Expendables 2. I did stunts. I was like, no, you didn't. But, but exactly that. It's that thing where you go, it's the storytelling thing. You go, if it tells the story, it doesn't matter if you were doubled.
Yeah. I'm always looking at Arnold Schwarzenegger's doubles and how the doubles are only doing the things that are dangerous, and that the physical acting is something that the reason that Arnold was so good at what he did is because he could be a physical actor so well. And I would actually question whether a stuntman could do that level of physical acting.
Exactly. So like Peter Kent, who used to double Arnold, is a very good friend, lovely guy. someone you might want to interview. Peter always like, Peter's like, yeah, he goes, just because I was a big stunt guy. So they were like, hey, you know, but he goes, the same thing. He goes, I did, he goes, Arnold was still doing the heavy lifting because if Arnold's acting didn't bridge that thing, sometimes with action when you go, when you try and tell someone, okay, I've just doubled you, can you just lift yourself up a bit so that when we do the edit, we edit on the movement and it sells that it was you instead of it being the Benny Hill edit where it's just a dummy falls, bang. It's that same thing. You go, you look at Jackie, you look at Samo, they've all been doubled at times. Pantyhose Hero, it's not Samo being hit by the car, even though Samo spent 2 weeks in hospital claiming he was suffering for his art. But it's just, you go, sometimes it's that same thing. You go, is it really worth risking the life of my person to do that? You know what? I'll just have a stunt guy do it. I'll just have a hand do it. Sometimes people want to be doubled for the wrong things. Like I was shooting a commercial one time and we were paying a model a lot of money and she wanted to leave early. So I was a hand model. I filled in as a hand. And people went, Jesus Christ, she's got horrible hands. Because my hands suddenly had long fingernails stuck on because I was like, we're paying you this much money. You came late and now you want to leave early. Okay. But Mike, we still need one shot of her like opening the bottle. I went, I'll do it. And she got all upset. I was like, you left. And I think that's the thing. You go, it's exactly like, Peter Kent will always say, he goes, okay, I did the motorcycle because I'm like, on Terminator 2 when they're going into the river thing, the motorbike's on a crane when it comes down. And Peter goes, I'm sure Arnold could have done that the first 2 or 3 times, but we did it about 20 times. You don't want to be, we just screwed up our schedule, screwed up our actor. You don't want to push, okay, we've done it and he was safe. Let's do it again. Let's do it again. Sometimes people get hurt on the most minor thing. Jackie is the prime example, like getting hurt doing the minor stuff, because the minor stuff is the stuff you go, that's fine. Like just the other night when like Rose Namajunas was fighting and she broke her finger in the first round. It's a thing where you go, it's a chance in a million thing, and then you go, okay, would she have won the fight if she could have punched? Like did that break then screw up the whole fight? So I think, as you said, like with Arnold and Stallone, I remember like Van Damme telling me like when they were doing Expendables 2 that at one point he was just watching Sly and Sly was working out the angle for one shot where like he's got the blade and he was seeing which angle, and John Cole was like, I wouldn't have thought of that. Like I wouldn't have thought of like how important that shot was. But to Sly, it's like, no, that's how it's going to work. Same with Arnold. And I think the same thing, that's what people forget, that sometimes you go, it's those little things that make it work. Sometimes when you watch something, you go, that person was just dialing it in. That person was just, and then you see the other stuff where you go, holy shit. Like when Samo on Dragon's Forever can make the veins come up on Jackie's neck. You're always like, oh. Whereas sometimes it's like,
I have a feeling maybe you could testify to this or not, that when Samo would direct Jackie, that he would bring out a very different side of Jackie in his works because he would put Jackie against guys that maybe Jackie wouldn't normally fight.
Samo is still the Daigor. Samo will insult you. Samo will say stuff to people to get the reaction, to get the motivation. Okay, in Pantyhose Hero, when Ridley comes over the table, that's a real frying pan because the fake frying pans were breaking too easy. So Samo was like, go get some real frying pans. And Ridley was like, I came over the table and I woke up on the floor. And it's a thing because sometimes you go, certain people can push you. It's like when you watch Drive, you can see that Steve Wang, Mark, and Koichi were all working as a team and they pushed each other and they lifted each other. You know what buttons to push on me to get the best out of me. In an ideal world, you can look at film as an art form. But sometimes you go, from a commercial side or from then you go, we got to get this shot and move on. We've got to get this done. So sometimes you go, okay, I've got to double someone. I've got to jump in. Sometimes an actor is injured, like on Dragon's Forever. Jackie, when he was doubled by Chingalop, I remember talking to Chingalop, and Chingalop was like, yeah, I doubled Jackie for that, and I doubled Yunbu for this. But he's like, I can't do this, this, and this, and this that they can do. And the same thing, like on Thunderbolt, Jackie was doubled a lot because he was still recovering from Rumble in the Bronx. You know, the problem is sometimes people forget, and especially now, of course, when you're watching them on HD, it's much easier to sometimes go, wow, that was Mars. Wow, that was not that person, you know. So like when New Line Cinema pushed that thing of no stuntman, no double, you suddenly start going, well, actually, if you watch Snake and the Eagle Shadow, Jackie's being doubled at certain points, you know. And it's like one of my friends, God bless him, Kong, did some of the gymnastic doubling in Snake and the Eagle Shadow just because Kong had that peaking opera background for flipping. And they wanted a specific kind. It's very easy to forget that not every movie, pre-viz rehearsal is very important, but sometimes you go, we don't have the time. Sometimes we are just jumping into stuff. You know, and the same thing, knowing when to double someone. Yuen Ping was not the original action director for The Matrix. It was John Chung from Dragon, the Bruce Lee story. Okay. I have a VHS that I need to digitize. All the casting tapes. But the thing is, Keanu time, people forget on The Matrix, Keanu had a broken neck, which is why Keanu's fighting style is very thing. John Chung was trying to get Keanu rolling and doing something. You go, it doesn't work. You know, and it's that thing where you go, it's not necessarily that John Chung's not as good a choreographer. It's just sometimes the style doesn't match the sort of thing. Hugo Weaving was like, it was insane. He goes like, you know, we're being asked to do a movie, being told, oh, but you got to come for 3 months of training. You know, and Hugo Weaving was like, when am I going to get a chance to do that again? Okay. Sometimes on the movie, I'm going to be like, Eric, can you grab that bit overnight? And you're like, no. You know, it's like going, do we have time to prep it? Do we have the, you know, do we have the rehearsal period? Do we have the prep period? Do we have the shooting time? Like, people forget how many times you're going to go, okay, are we going to go for that again? I remember with, like on Drunken Master 2, the end fight was 4 months. If I gave you 4 months to do the end fight, you could do a fight probably as good as Drunken Master 2 because you have that benefit of time, you know, where you're able to go, okay, I'm going to do this kick and I'm going to be able to do it like 3 or 4 times and I'm done for the day. You know, I'd be on set and Jackie would be like, I don't know what happens next. I'm trying to think of the next move.
I'm not going to compare myself to Jackie Chan, but when we did Contour, and people still cite Contour a lot for its fights, and one of the reasons that the fights in Contour are good is because we took a year to make that movie.
Oh, exactly.
And that warehouse scene, all of the scenes in the warehouse, the action scenes, cumulatively, we probably spent 70, 80 days in a warehouse. And yeah, there were days where we'd show up and Dennis and I would sort of kick ideas around, and after a few hours we were like, you know what, there's nothing today, let's just go home. And we got nothing some days, and Flashpoint was like that too.
Okay, when we're doing Chasing the Dragon, the one scene I always get angry about is, because I was like, Donnie, it was the one scene we could have had a kung fu fight, is when Philip Earn and Donnie face off. Philip Earn had a broken arm. I knew he had a broken arm. Philip knew he had a broken arm. Nobody else knew he had a broken arm. Yeah, because Philip was like, I got to fight Donnie in. I'm not going to tell him I've got a broken arm thing. And at the end of the first day, Donnie was like, oh, what's wrong with your arm? I broke it. You know, if you've got that time, if you've got that luxury thing. And as we said, the problem is that sometimes you go, these people have got too much luxury and it's becoming over-rehearsed or it's becoming over-thing. Of course, if you can design a fight and then have a set builder who's going to build it with the breakaways in place, I mean, it's fantastic.
You talked about over-rehearsed, and I think that you touched on this earlier too, with the sort of pre-viz is a very much an industry standard now. And I found that sometimes doing pre-viz, what they'll do is they'll say, well, we get 3 months of pre-viz, and it's like, do you even know what the location is? And sometimes the answer is no, we're just designing 3 months worth of action scenes that can take place anywhere. And you see it stuck into the movie.
Yeah.
And it's like, oh, it doesn't even feel like it exists there because they didn't even know what the location would be. So that's to your point of, a set designer actually making that thing happen. Now with motion capture, you have the same issue times 10 because you have like it's very easy. And unfortunately, it's very easy to take, if you have a room full of columns, to suddenly just like move those columns around. Okay, well, now your action that you've designed for the past 2 months no longer fits there anymore.
Exactly.
So, one of the discussions that we had early on with God of War Ragnarok was like, what geography do we know is going to stay? What geography do we know that we can change? And we would design around that so that whatever the action was, it felt like it existed there. Do you think that, are you seeing a lot of use of Pre-Viz in Hong Kong? Do you think that Pre-Viz is causing this sort of this over-rehearsed kind of action?
It's kind of a combination. Like sometimes you said, like people forget about the environment. Like one of my favorite fights in a Hong Kong movie from the early 90s is in a comedy. It's called Arrest the Restless, starring Leslie Cheung. But it's set in 1960s Hong Kong. And at one point, one of Leslie Cheung's friends is a Wing Chun guy and is having a fight in a dance hall against a Choi Fat guy. And he's getting wailed on. And Leslie Cheung goes, go to the toilet. And the guy runs into the bathroom and is in the cubicle. And the Choi Fat guy comes in and goes, and the Wing Chun guy gets him. And I was like, using the environment. And as you said, that's the problem. That it's very easy to go, okay, I'm just going to choreograph a fight. And then you're like, oh, I choreographed all these high kicks and like huge jumps, and we're in a room where there's low beams and it's everything. You go, I can't do that now.
You'll lose your entire Pre-Viz at that point.
Yeah. And then the problem is, as you said, is sometimes it's that thing where people are going, oh, we've got 3 months. Okay, that's 3 months work. It's just, of course, financially, sometimes you go, that's 3 months work. That's good. But sometimes you go, can I do a month and a half of training the actors and then we work on the Pre-Viz or the thing so that we can say, okay, that guy can just like, when we were doing Hilius, before we shot the first action scene, they said, oh, we want to do a stunt walkthrough. Can you guys all come on Monday? I was like, great. And we got there, and instead of going, okay, so Eric, what can you do? Dave, what can you do? Steve, what can you do? They went, okay, a car's going to blow up here. Someone's going to get shot there. Someone's going to fall down the stairs there. Blah, blah, blah. Okay, thanks. See you tomorrow. And then the next day, of course, there's a big 6'8" Pakistani guy. And they're going, can you fall down the stairs? Can you do this? And I'm going, guys, and there's something, there's a point where they're trying to get him to do a reaction. I was going, just tie a rope to his leg and pull him. Because I was like, he's not a stunt guy. He can't do that reaction. If we just pull him, he'll be able to do it. But he can't throw himself because he's just like, I don't understand that bit.
And they found him at a gym probably. And
yeah, and sometimes that's still the problem, that they'll go, we've hired this guy. And you go, did you see what he can do? Did you get to come in? Like, it's finding that balance between being over prepared and too rough and ready.
So when you have these issues where you suddenly have, your star shows up, Donnie Yen shows up, and you've got a bunch of, Guaylo actors who can't fight. They just got hired to be soldiers. They can't fight. Will Donnie Yen go to production and say, guys, we need to figure out a better casting process for this?
Yeah, that's how I got on Chasing the Dragon, because they'd been casting that for 3.5 months. And then Donnie called me up, was like, Mike, can you come in and help? And I was like, sure. And part of the problem was they were giving all the local actors a Google Translate document and no direction. And, if anyone watching who doesn't look at these, basically every word in Cantonese has 9 versions. So Google Translate 9 times out of 10 will choose the most abstract version. So basically they were handing all these local actors a page of gibberish and giving them no background, no direction, and then just going, dance, monkey, dance. So everyone's doing casting. They're like, Mike, none of the Western actors in Hong Kong can act. And I'm like, what scene are you giving them to audition? Oh, we're just giving them this. I'm like, let me write an audition scene. So I wrote an audition scene, called all the guys back. And, I remember one of the ADs was like, but Mike, all these guys have been in before. None of them can act. Mike, they can act. I was like, because we've given them a real script and we've given them a bit of direction and some background. So they're like, okay, my character is angry or my character is happy, as opposed to just, hi, I love you, bye-bye. And then I brought in 2 guys from England. And then like on Big Brother, they came to me and said, hey, this is what we want. And I said, okay, look, I can cast these guys locally. But I said, for the main guy, let me bring someone in. So like when that happens, it's always good. The problem is a lot of the time production isn't thinking about that. They're just thinking, and often because there's not enough prep time, you're the director or the action director, and you're busy shooting this scene. You don't have time to have a meeting with me to tell me what you really want. So like, okay, when we did True Legend, I brought in a whole bunch of guys, and me and one of the producers were going, are you sure you want just wrestling guys? Yeah. And your opinion's like, I just want wrestling guys. And I was like, you don't want any guys that can do weapons or can do anything? No. Just big guys. And me and the producer were like, okay, we've got this in writing because we know it's going to come back and bite us on the behind. And then, of course, I bring in all the wrestling guys and your opinion's like, why are these wrestling guys are here? Can any of them do weapons? Can any of them do this? It's like, that's not what you asked for. Yeah, but no. And I was like, that's the hard thing sometimes. So that's where, like, say, like on Man of Tai Chi, one of the things I was in love with Keanu about was Keanu was like, okay, this fighter is a Taekwondo guy. And I went, okay, does he have to be Asian? Does he have to be male? No, they just need to be good at Taekwondo. So I was like, okay, gives me more things that I can play with. The good thing was Keanu was like, give me some choices. Give me some ideas. Why do you think this guy can do it? Why do you think this guy can do it? As I said, it's just getting past that thing of like, okay, we just need some Western bad guys. Oh, hang on a minute, they can't do anything. In Man with the Iron Fist, there's one guy who plays like the leader of the Rat Clan, and he's like all dirty and beggarish and everything. That's a friend of mine called Darren Chu. And Darren did a great audition. I was like, okay, Darren, I can't present your audition. He's like, why? I went, because all your headshots are super GQ. They're all like, and he's like, what do you mean? I went, so nobody will look at you. Everyone's like, he can't play that character. Look at it. So I was like, do me a favor. I was like, don't shave for 2 days. Put on a kung fu jacket and just do some kung fu poses and send me some pictures. He did, and everyone was like, yeah, okay, let's have a look at his reel. Oh, his audition's really good. But it's sometimes it's why I always tell actors, and stunt guys, like, on your comp card, have a couple of different looks. Because some casting directors will just go, oh, Mike's bald. He can only play a bald guy. Like when I grow hair, people get freaked out because people are like, Mike, you have hair. I'm like, I shave my head, guys, not bald. So I think it's just, as we said,
Gordon Liu must have gone through the same
thing. Yeah, and it's that same thing that like when Gordon had hair, people didn't take any notice of it. People were like, Mike, what's the appeal of it? Oh my God, he's got no hair. Suddenly there's something there. It's not that hard to just go, okay, Eric, in this movie, I need you to swim. Can you just send me a video of you swimming so I know you can swim? Because the problem is actors and stunt guys, everything, will sometimes lie to get a job. And then you're like, okay, but dude, I've now flown you halfway around the world and you're telling me you can't do this, you can't do that.
So when you're looking around the world right now at all these other action cinemas cropping up, you have a lot of people sort of copying this Hong Kong process. And for better or for worse, sometimes this produces very spontaneous kind of action styles. Like Ong Bak is a very kind of Hong Kong inspired action
Where did style. It all go wrong after that? Where did it all go wrong?
Yeah, I mean, in 2003, we saw the Thai style in maybe 1999, we saw the Korean style, right?
Yep.
And the Korean style has had this amazing shelf life. It will not die. And then in 2012, we see the Indonesian style, right?
Yep.
Are we getting to the point where there is so much mixing of media and so much multimedia influence, Hollywood influence overseas, brain drains of these people going off and working in China or Hollywood? Are we losing what a local style, local as in some kind of like Thai or Cambodia, are we losing a local style?
I don't know, because like prime example is the Philippines. I'm like, why hasn't anyone in the Philippines done a really cool Anis or Kali movie? Yeah, I'm like, guys, like, you're the birthplace of Anis and Kali. Like, why isn't anyone doing a full-blooded Filipino martial arts movie? I think part of the problem is it's producers wanting to take that gamble. Like, you look at, say, like with Thailand, all the movies that, like, say, Panaridikri was doing himself were all super low budget movies, and they were regarded by producers as that. They're like, oh, they're just, they're low budget quickies. The gods came together, and suddenly Pratcha, Pana, and Tony all came together, and there was that moment where this is it. But then the problem is, it's like anything. When we're all in the foxhole, we're foxhole buddies. When the ceasefire comes, suddenly, oh, you've gone that way, I've gone over here. Oh, you want to take a holiday? Oh, but I want to do this. I want to, You look at, say, Born to Fight, Dan Chupong and Noi Kesserin. I'm like Noi Kesserin. I'm like, that girl is beautiful. She's incredibly talented. Why didn't she just go boom?
And I always wondered why.
Kind of jumped. Yeah. Gija suddenly got that opportunity. I was like, okay, they're kind of giving it to Gija, but then Gija, you made her mark with chocolate, and then they kind of didn't know what to do with it. And I think that's the problem, that you don't want to be the one-trick pony. As we said, like with Eco's doing great stuff, but you kind of going, Eco needs something again to go, boom. Tony at the moment is working on something that I'm hoping kind of reestablishes the Tony Jaa style. Because we've seen glimpses of it. Like, if you watch, what was the movie? He did like a China movie a couple of years ago, Detective Chinatown in Japan. And Tony's awesome in it. But he's a supporting role, and it's like, you're sort of going, yeah, but why can't we take that supporting role and make it thing? It's like Triple Threat. Triple Threat was great fun, but Triple Threat wasn't the movie it should have been. Triple Threat was kind of a McDonald's.
Why do you think that was? Was it because of the amount of time that they had to do the action? What do you think happened? Because you have 6 of the greatest action stars in history.
I think part of the problem is when you've got 6 of the greatest action stars, because you're trying to give everyone stuff to do, and suddenly, like Jesse actually did an interview the other week and mentioned it. When you've suddenly got a main cast of like 10 people, and like 6 people are in the same scene, suddenly this scene is now taking 2 days to film as opposed to 6 hours, and suddenly you're dealing with everybody's egos, kind of like the Expendables and everything. That suddenly, oh, okay, now you want to do this, and because you're doing that, I want to do this now. So I think.
How did someone?
Sorry, I think with Triple Threat, it was a case of when the movie began development, it was a Tiger Chen movie. Tiger was putting it together, and then the way it all came together, suddenly it kind of became the Tony Jaa movie, and Tiger kind of got pushed back a bit. And then the problem was, because of everyone's schedules, it was like, okay, we've got to start shooting, boom. And for the time they had, Tim did a really good job with the choreography. Scott and Coke, like Scott, I thought was great as the villain. And there's flashes, like I think Eco looks great, Tony looks good. But it's just that thing where you go, if they just had a little bit more time, I think there were too many chefs. There were too many people going, we need to make it like this. We need to make it like that. We need to make it like this. When it should have been someone going, we've got 6 of the best martial arts people. This needs to be a full-blooded martial arts movie, as opposed to a kind of Expendables Dirty Dozen movie.
How did Sammo do it in films like Millionaires Express?
Because Sammo takes no prisoners. Yes, You've got Samo directing certain scenes. You've got Corey, an assistant, directing. It's like, okay, Enter the Eagles, the Shannon Lee movie, Bang Nearly Dead, is a Korean movie. But the Benny Akitas Shannon Lee fight, Sammo Hung action choreographed and directed. And someone was always like, no, I didn't. I'm like, I was there. Like, I have video. Oh, no, I just came in to help. And that was the thing. You look at back then, and you had that thing where suddenly you're able to be calling up Chad Stileski going, hey, Chad, can you come in for a couple days to help me? Because I'm actually in this scene as an actor. Can you maybe come in and help direct it? Or, hey, JJ, can you come in and help me? And all these guys were helping each other and putting egos to one side and going, yeah, sure, okay. So, like you said earlier, like with Jackie, Samo can pull a thing. Same way, shall we say, Jimmy Wang Yu had the power to go, Jackie, Samo, Andy Lau, get your asses to Taiwan. And, as Jackie always puts it, mate, Hengdai, when someone like Jimmy Wang Yu calls you, you say yes. It's finding that thing of being able to go, okay, like when Wu Jing was prepping Wolf Warrior 2, they sent me a script, and I was like, Wu Jing is a genius. I was like, this movie will make billions in China, because the original script, the two warring armies are outside the hospital. Wu Jing wraps himself in the Chinese flag, and he steps out, and the power of the Chinese flag makes the two opposing armies lower their guns. I was like, Wu Jing, you are a genius. The finished movie is a lesser version of that. They adjusted it a bit. But I was like, okay, for China, that will make a lot of money, because China at the moment has discovered patriotic movies. So the funny thing is, when people complain, I go, guys, you do know that Rambo and Top Gun and everything are kind of like jingoistic, okay, America movies. I go, it's a Chinese movie for a Chinese market. Of course, the Chinese are going to be the good guys.
Yeah, I like to call them. I like to call Chinese movies Ronald Reagan movies, because
exactly
there was that kind of era, and we had that time. We had that. It's like that with fossil fuels, right? It's like they want to use fossil fuels now. What are you going to do?
No, exactly. And it's kind of like that, because sometimes people go to me, Mike, I want to get funding for this movie from China. Okay, what's the movie about? Oh, the Chinese police are utterly corrupt, so the American police come to it. I go, you can't get funding from China. Why? I go, okay, guys, China is not like America in the fact that you can make fun of the government. It's like you can't really claim the Chinese police and army are corrupt and the Americans have to come and save the day. I was like, I think the Ronald Reagan era, reference is perfect, because you go, look at, I just rewatched the original Red Dawn. That's not at all patriotic. You just go, it's, people forget that, this movie was made for this audience. This video game was made for that. Okay, Barbie is the Barbie movie is making $1 billion. That's not a movie made for me. And I have no interest in watching it. But it's like, I'm not going to knock the filmmakers and go, they don't know what they're doing. I'm like, they made $1 billion. They know what they're doing.
Do you think, though, that some people are critical of China, that the production model kind of incentivizes you to make a very jingoistic kind of film in China?
Yeah,
do you think that? But do you think that the criticism about that is that, like, well, because Top Gun was made in a time where you weren't even trying to sell, you weren't selling to Russia, you weren't selling those films to international sales, were nowhere near as important as they are now. And so do you think that maybe some of this criticism is like, look, China, if you wanted to make better international sales, you should kind of like ease up on that stuff?
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing, because it's like, if you look at, say, prime example is the Red Dawn remake. Originally, that was China as the villain. Then in post-production, it became North Korea, because they realized North Korea will steal the movie and pirate it. But hang on, if we can get the China market, we can get box office, let's make it China-friendly. What cracks me up is you've got all these people going, China is terrible, but I want access to the Chinese market. And I'm like, okay, then if you want access to that market, you kind of got to deal with the funny thing of that is, I remember a couple of years ago when John Woo was going to do the Flying Tigers movie, and I upset someone by going, you do know the Flying Tigers were white guys? And the script they had suddenly had all these American Chinese pilots. And I was like, okay, you're adapting that to make it work. So
do we have so in America there are a lot of people right now who are speaking out against what they consider censorship on social media, and also they think that there's a sort of like sort of implicit bias within the studio system that only supports certain political views and whatnot, even though if you were to take a lower budget, you could still do your whatever fringy film and you wouldn't get the same press, etc. A lot of the censorship I think that they are complaining about is very social, and it's very much predicated on you just won't get as much reach.
exactly, and it's the same thing that I'm old, so I'm working with one company at the moment, and when I signed the contract with them, we had the pronoun discussion, and I said very simple. I'm an old white guy who lives in Asia. I'm already offensive to some people, and I said, I will call people sir or madam, not to be patronizing, but because I can't remember your names. I went, sometimes I will hold a door open for you because that's what my parents told me to do. And I hope that maybe one day you'll hold a door open for me when I'm carrying stuff. I said that's like, especially in Hong Kong and China, Cantonese especially is such a direct language that it's so hard to be politically correct. Like when we were doing Chasing the Dragon, there was a female AD called, and one of the foreign actors goes to me, Mike, why do you always call her? Her name is Bobo. I was like, her name isn't Bobo. He was like, yes, it is. And he went, no, they're calling me Borbor because I have a big chest. And he was like, what? And Wong Jing and everyone were like, well, yeah, that's her name. And it's not to be obnoxious. It's just this, like when we did Fearless, we had for the director's cut, there's the scene with a couple of American actors, and one of them was very PC. It was like, oh, so Mike, who's this? I'm like, that's Eric, but we call him Beardy. Why? I'm like, because he has a beard. Oh, I can't call him that. That would be rude. I'm like,
how dare you point that out?
Yeah, I was like, but that's what we call him. And then the funny thing was, I introduced him to one of the guys. Went, oh, this is Feiwa, and he goes, what does that mean? And the guy went, I'm fat and my name is Wa. And the guy was like, oh, I can't call you that. And the guy was like, but that's my name. He was like, Big Mike is Big Mike because he's big. He was like, Yun Wu Ping is the eighth master because he's the eighth child. And it became that whole thing of, we're in that weird thing where I don't understand woke. I don't understand this because I'm like, today this is acceptable, tomorrow it's wrong. And if I say this while standing on one leg and wearing a green hat, it's acceptable. And you go, the problem is now you just have to apologize for things. And as you said, it's that same thing. You got to go, if I'm aiming for this market and I want full control, then I've got to compromise on some stuff. If I'm making a movie for the biggest possible audience, then I've got to maybe not be controversial. And you look at the whole history of cinema, and there's always been, okay, we've got to adjust this, we've got to adjust that. And the same thing, you look at, like, how to say, what I don't like now is when they've started banning stuff and going, oh, this is, we can't show this anymore because I go, put a warning on it and say this movie was shot at a time, like, there's a movie I'm about to do an audio commentary for, and I was like, okay, this is a movie of its time, like just from the thing. So I said, when we begin the commentary, I'm going to point out that this is a movie that was produced in the 1970s, and there is tone and there is language and there are references that some people may find offensive. But this is a movie called Bloodthirsty Bastards Killing People. If you are watching this movie, you should understand that this may be not for sensitive ears. There is some stuff that you go, oh my God, that's super offensive. There's a British TV series that when I was a kid was very popular called Elena Hotman, and it was about the British Army in Malaysia after the war. And three of the main characters were Indians, two of whom were played by Indian actors, one of whom was played by a British actor in brown face. A British actor who spoke perfect Hindu, who had been a captain in the Gurkhas, who was born and raised in India, and according to the two Indian actors, constantly apologized and did everything he could to get better deals and everything. And if you watch the show, the three Indian characters are constantly saving the British characters, something, and making the British characters look like idiots. And I go, that show is now not allowed to be shown because of that. And I go, okay, if you're going to ban that, what about this? How come this is acceptable? That's not like, put a warning on it and let people know, like, I completely understand. But I go, it's become, when you start erasing stuff from history, that starts becoming a problem. When you start going, oh, I can't talk about that, I can't talk about this,
well,
this,
and I think that this is the worry right now, and I don't know if it'll come true. Maybe it'll just continue to be an economic decision because, I mean, look, there are some people out there who have said controversial things that are not illegal to say by any means. They might seem rude, but they end up finding that they can't have a bank account. And so that's when people start to get kind of on edge. They say,
oh, exactly. And let's end this before we get super late. But I had that discussion with someone recently where I went, you can't be saying, you must accept me for this, this, and this, but I'm not accepting you. Because I go, you start giving people the thing to go, well, you want me to accept you, but you're not accepting me. So now I have a bigger problem with you. And I went, you kind of got to go, I would like to be perceived as this. You'd like to be perceived as that. We're gonna bang heads, or we're gonna do things at some point. Of course, if you're trying to kill people, I have an issue with you. But sometimes you go, it's almost progress. Sometimes I feel like it's almost going back to like schoolyard, playground mentality, where I don't like you because you like this football team. Well, then you start going, of course, there's more to it. But when it becomes like, you start going, okay, why, if we're going to ban this, then are we going to ban that? Are we going to say that Enter the Dragon is cultural misappropriation because it's set in Hong Kong, but people are wearing karate gis? Right. And, like, when there are things I've done, like, The Amazing Race and everything. And we've done stuff where they've gone, we have a specific idea how we want Hong Kong to look. And I'm going, okay, but we don't really have Shaolin monks practicing Kung Fu everywhere. Yeah, but Mike, this is Hong Kong. Okay, we did a reality show one time. I had to import fortune cookies to Hong Kong. Do you know how hard it is to import fortune cookies to Hong Kong? Because one, we don't have them. And two, every company in America is like, okay, you want 20,000 fortune cookies. Where do you want them shipped to? To Hong Kong.
To the homeland. Yeah.
And then your Hong Kong crew is like, Mike, what's this? And you go, it's fortune cookie.
It's American food.
What's that? And then they go, Mike, there's a piece of paper in the fortune in there. I go, yeah, that's a good message. They're like, why is there a piece of paper? I'm like, just trust me. If you're a Westerner, we believe in this stuff. And it's
and then play the lottery with the numbers on the back too.
Yeah, so you go, everything, if you look at everything, you can get offended. You can, I can find something offensive. I can go, oh, you've got a copy of Mad magazine hanging in the background. I find that magazine to be offensive nowadays.
Me too.
I'm sure there's some issues that are offensive. I'm sure there's some issues that are still, hilarious. But you go, it's become that weird thing now where, as you said, I'm now not going to allow you to open a bank account. A friend of mine who's a stewardess, she was air hostess, got to be politically correct now, whatever. But she was saying about, the scary amount of violence towards crew and everything. I said, what they need to start doing is going, okay, you caused a problem. You're now banned from flying for a year or two. Because I went, when you have to explain to your family or your boss why you can't attend that conference or that family gathering because you're not allowed to fly because you punched someone on a plane, I went, people will start to calm down a bit, because when there's a consequence, suddenly people kind of guard themselves a little bit.
Yeah, so, I think people are probably acting out also because they know that they're going to be on social media and it's a sort of moment of potential celebrity. They might even consider that it's a worthwhile. Maybe I want to be a celebrity for a year.
Thing, exactly. There was just some social media guy in England who's taking like all this joy in being arrested and everything, and going, oh well, the reason I can get away with it is because the laws are so bad. And you're like, wait a minute, you can't use that as an excuse for being a dick. Let's not get political, but yeah, it's just,
of course,
the whole world's mental. Kung fu is cool. Kicking people in the head, doing reactions is good.
I'm really trying to understand, the two sides, and one. Let's talk about like pragmatic solutions to this real quick, and this goes back to the very beginnings. Might be a good way to wrap it up. But the idea of, frankly, though, the idea of banning and erasing things to me is terrifying.
Yeah,
that's why I keep physical things. And
no, 100%. As I do. That's the thing now that people are going, oh, they've taken that movie off of Netflix. And I go, come look at my Laserdisc collection. Come look at my VHS. Come look at
they're
that.
Coming for you. They're coming for you next, though, Mike. They're going to come.
Yeah.
To
oh no, I know. I've hidden them all. But it's the problem I find is that it's where do you draw the line? Anyone can find anything offensive. As you said, I'd much rather you put a warning on something and say this contains scenes of violence, kicking people in the head, political, blah blah blah. Okay, at least I know. Like,
yeah, we had those. They were called trigger warnings. We had them, and people had a big problem with that too.
Yeah, that was my issue when there was recently the people who sued over the trailer for Yesterday. Because even though she's not on the poster and listed in the main cast, I was convinced that Anna de Armas was in that movie, and thus the 3 times I watched the movie, I was upset. I want $1 million, and I was like, okay, guys. Does that mean I can complain because I've seen trailers for James Bond movies or for something where it wasn't in the movie? You go, it's one thing to be the Highlander 4 trailer that had the stuff that was shot specifically to make people think it was a good movie. And there's one thing to go, this is a teaser trailer. This is a trailer that was edited while we were shooting the movie. Some stuff is mismarketed 100%. Some stuff is just,
But do you think that there might be some... And I call this soft censorship because I don't think that it's nefarious, but I call it the Criterion phenomenon, which is that you have a lot of Japanese films, a lot of Japanese, samurai films made before World War II. Some of them get, or anytime, some of them get Criterion releases. Others, where are they? They're on 35 millimeter prints that maybe had a VHS release or had a TV release in Japan, and they will never be seen, but they're still fantastic movies. And do you think that there is a risk for Hong Kong films to fall into this same censorship's not a fair word, but it's like you're falling down the digital rabbit hole where people think that
the biggest problem in Hong Kong has always been a lot of people, including a lot of people in the Hong Kong film industry, didn't look at Hong Kong film in the long run. Like, prime example, I understand people going, oh, we don't have a print for this movie from 75 years ago. When suddenly you've got people going, we don't have a negative for Hard Boiled. We don't have a master print for that. You go, number one, it's only 30 years ago. Two, it's not like it's a movie that didn't go anywhere.
I mean, in your view, is it a possibility that Hong Kong films are going to go down the dark path of being forgotten due to digital sort of everything taking over and hard media going away?
Yes and no. I mean, the crazy thing is, prime example is there's just been the release of a documentary called Enter the Clones of Bruce Lee by Michael Worth and David Gregory at Severin. They've been tracking down a lot of the Bruceploitation movies. And the hard thing there is a lot of the original companies are gone. They're doing it the right way. They're doing it all the legal way. They're like, we want to secure rights. We want to do it thing. The problem is with some of that thing is I'm going, hi, Eric. I know you're the producer of a Contour, and I'd like to license Contour from you. And you're like, well, yeah, I'm the rights holder, Mike. I produced it, but I actually have no materials, no negative, no answer print, not even a beta cam. But because you've contacted me, if you ever release it, I'll sue you. So I would like you to not only pay me, but when you find a negative or anything, make a copy and send me. So the thing is, some movies have vanished. Like a lot of companies, when they disappeared, Ocean Shores would take ownership of those movies because they'd be like, well, that company has vanished. We were looking after the film for them. We'll kind of become the unofficial rights holder. Then Ocean Shores went under and closed its doors, and a lot of stuff just disappeared. It's finding those original materials. And the big problem is, especially in Southeast Asia, the humidity kills stuff. I'm having to, at the moment, try and unmodify VHS and DV tapes and high 8 tapes that have got rare footage and behind the scenes and stuff. That's the problem at the moment with a lot of the Cinema City movies. Cinema City, the various partners don't seem interested in sorting out some of the rights issues. So the problem is, that's why some movies like The Killer and Hard Boiled and everything, it's very hard to get a new version of it because there's all kinds of rights issues. The same way, okay, like say if you wanted to do a sequel to Double Impact, the Van Damme movie, the way that movie was put together was through a lot of pre-sale. So the problem is, I own the Double Impact rights for this territory. You own them for that territory. So you've then got to get the majority of the rights holders to all agree to everything. So with Hong Kong film, I do worry that some Hong Kong films are lost. Then bizarrely, you have companies like, there's a company in Hong Kong called Panorama that has been releasing HD copies of some really obscure, like category 3 movies, comedies and stuff that I'm like, wait a minute, there was an HD master of this movie, but there's not of Hard Boiled. In Hong Kong, we have the Hong Kong Film Archive, which is totally useless. And basically, you'd give them a master of contour, and then they'll refuse to ever show it to anyone or do anything with it. But they're like, we have it. It's safe with us. There's some Hong Kong movies like Jumping Ash, which is a really cool new wave movie from about 1978, I think. I was talking to one of the producers, and he was like, no, I gave a master to the Hong Kong Film Archive. And the Hong Kong Film Archive is, yeah, but it would be too much effort to do anything with it. And I was like, yeah, but I have a company that's willing to pay to scan it, to do everything, and then is willing to give you a copy of the master. Oh, yeah, but you want me to go into the vault and look for it? This is the problem. So I think, yeah, there's a lot of Hong Kong stuff that I do worry about is either lost, or as we've say, the Bruce Lee footage, it wasn't catalogued properly, or it's just sitting in a vault nobody knows about. Jackie Chan shot a whole bunch of test footage for Fireman's Story in the early 90s. He was going to do a movie, Fireman's Story, with Choi Siu-ming from Bury Me High directing it. One time we were having a conversation, and Jackie was like, oh, no. I don't know what you're talking about. I was like, but you showed me the test footage. You had the guys from Backdraft work on it, and it's fire going through the Hong Kong Central MTR station. And he was like, oh, yeah, that footage, that's in my vault. There was a guy called Xavier Lee who shot and directed my stunts and a few things for Jackie. That guy, for about 20 years, was shooting interviews and behind the scenes on Jackie's movies for Jackie's own use. And I'm like, where is that footage now? What's being done with it? And that's the crazy thing, that it's sometimes not just finding a physical copy, it's finding the rights holders, music issues because music wasn't cleared. Sometimes, like say with Ocean Shores, for instance, Ocean Shores' contract would say, and any other media. So, we've now invented VCD. We, Ocean Shores, will distribute it. We've now invented DVD. So I do worry a little bit that it's just some stuff is lost, I'm afraid. So keep your VHS, keep your laser discs. When VCD first came out, I remember buying a VHS copy of The Secret Rivals in Hong Kong, released by Mayer, and the VHS was a crystal letterbox print. I was like, excellent. 2 years later, VCD comes out. One of their first releases, Secret Rivals. I buy a copy of the VCD. It's a grainy, full-screen print. And you're like, wait a minute, this makes no sense. Like, say, when Celestial first started releasing the Shores movies, and a lot of people complained that, this was not the original version of Chinatown Kid, or this was not the original version of that. Nobody at Celestial had seen those movies. Nobody at Celestial was aware there was an alternate cut. There was an alternate edit. Like, for a lot of Hong Kong movies, there are Hong Kong cuts. There are Malaysian cuts. There are international cuts. There are Taiwanese cuts. There's so many different versions. I'm sure, like, even when you did, say, Contour, you had to get release forms signed by everyone, right? Hong Kong, there's no release forms. You know? So if you really wanted to, you could probably be a dick and go, all Hong Kong movies could be sued because there's not release forms in everyone. But it's just a case of, it does worry me a little bit that as much as I love the ease of digital, I love the smell of Laserdisc in the morning. Yeah, it's, you know. Yeah.
And we also have to be careful that, you know, if we have 8K TVs and we're trying to find content for that 8K TV and all we can find is a DVD print of one movie, well, don't just chuck it away.
No, exactly.
Go with what you got.
I get it from sometimes young filmmakers going, oh, Mike, I want to shoot this movie, but I need to shoot it on 5K at this because what if one day I go IMAX? And I'm like, well, what if one day we want to project it on the moon? I'm like, let's film the movie. Let Netflix or HBO or Amazon work out how to make it work for the thing. Yeah. Because when you first started shooting stuff, you were shooting on what? High 8 or DV or VHS or...
Yeah, mini DV.
Yeah. So the thing is, it worked. Yeah. It you know, but nowadays, sometimes I'm like, people are getting too caught up on, oh, well, I need to shoot it on this specific camera. Right? And I'm like, no, it's what you're shooting. It's what the story you're telling. It's the action you're doing. It's not necessarily the camera that's the selling point, you know. Yeah. So it's a long-winded way of saying, yes, I'm worried about some stuff disappearing. So please send me all your Laserdiscs and VHS for safekeeping. I will protect them in my cave. Yeah.
Well, Mike, thank you so much. This has been it's been awesome.
I hope I didn't waffle on too long. But Mike, young Master Eric, it has been a pleasure, sir.
Thank you.
As I hope there was something useful amongst the waffle. And to all those watching and listening, I apologize, but I'm an ugly bastard, and that's who I am. Yeah. On that, keep the faith. Take care. Speak soon.
Bye. Thank you. Action Talks is available on YouTube, iTunes, and Spotify. Join my Telegram at t.me/Eric Jacobus. You can check out my studio at superalloyinteractive.com. My website and blog is at ericjacobus.com. And be sure to subscribe. Thank you.